We paint tiny people and we play with them.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Miniatures Monthly. My name is Chris Thurston and as ever I'm joined by Tom Senior.
Hello.
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 It's pretty exciting this month. We were excited last month, but it's even more exciting this month, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We are recording this exactly a week before Age of Sigmar Christmas 2.
Only 7 days away. Got my pre-order in. I'm buying everything, Chris. I'm buying everything they're selling me.
You want all of it. You want Ghosts.
I do. I want Ghosts. I even bought one of the new rangefinder thing. Yeah.
So I've left those little spicy editions, those little sort of like, well, I'm already in for 100, in for, 10,000 pennies, in for the rest of the pounds kind of things.
Yeah.
I've left them for when I go to pick up my pre-order. I will inevitably buy like scenery dice or something.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
Those tasty extras.
But when initially doing the pre-order, I wanted to occupy the world where I buy only what we need.
Indeed.
What are you picking up?
So I'm picking up the new box, which is the new Stormcast army, which is the Sacrosanct Chamber, and they're facing off against the Nighthaunt, which are just a bunch of beautiful models. And
just a bunch of beautiful ghosts.
Lovely wibbly ghosts and guys in cool cowls with big sides, and they're awesome. That comes with the rule book, which is enormous. They're doing a kind of almost like a 40k style.
It's bigger than the 40k book.
Oh, it's like a gorgeous hardback thing with full of lore and maps and scenarios and just pure nerd goodness, really. Very excited. And yeah, the Games Workshop books are beautiful things. They're really, really lovely. And I love the 40k rulebook. I still just pick it up and just look at it every now and then because it's just beautiful. I love the idea that AOS is getting something that equivalent to that for the new edition.
Yeah, totally. And so the core set?
Core set, Malign Sorcery, which comes with 12 spells, is it?
It's 13 spells and I think 16 models because some of the spells are more than one model.
Yes, that's true. Like there's some chains that come out
and the Geminids of Ulgul Hayish.
They might be my favourite. The rules for those are crazy as well. They sort of form a beam and you move them across enemies and it makes it harder for them to hit and move and stuff. And it's super cool.
I'm pretty convinced that I'm going to be incapable of referring to those spells by their full names without doing a wizard voice, which is the same as, which is a new rule to add to they're all horses, Tom. They're all just horses.
We've got just horses and we've got to pronounce.
Not to skip ahead, but that they're all horses thing is going to get increasingly difficult based on some Stormcast changes that are coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, anyway. So yeah, Malign Sorcery and
that goes with the book, and it comes with some scenarios, I believe, and it comes with like, what I really like, both the sets come with cards for just using at the tabletop, like, just kind of, reference cards for all of the spells and for all of the units, which is rad.
Yeah.
I'm also picking up the General's Handbook, which is, I was kind of surprised that this is coming out alongside everything else, because I thought it might be sort of react to the changes in AOS and then sort of like point things accordingly. But no, they've just gone straight out there and saying, we've redesigned the whole game and here it is in one big package. And so that's going to contain like match play profiles and points for all of the armies. And, it's going to contain loads of scenarios and stuff as well. So that's exciting. I also got the rangefinder and that's it, I think. That's pretty much everything they're putting out.
Yeah, it's close to.
Pretty much, apart from the dice and the little odds and sods. And I've still got some the kind of scoring counters and the turn counters from the previous sort of General's Handbook, so I don't need any of that stuff.
I did get that stuff.
Yeah.
That was my extravagance. So yeah, I'm not bothering with the core set because as I talk about in this podcast, I really want to focus on my core projects and not add armies that I don't really plan to collect. But I'm going to get the book, obviously, because it's got maps in it. Malign Sorcery and General's Handbook, and inevitably some dice of some description.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, probably a note about the pod itself because, so this is, obviously very, very exciting, but because this is coming out, basically right after we'd normally put the pod out, it puts us in a weird position, Tom, doesn't it? Because we obviously can't, go in depth on, we want to go in depth on Age of Sigmar 2nd edition after we've got all the stuff.
Yeah.
But we definitely can't do that the same day we get all the stuff because that's like, 500 pages of books and obviously loads of models to build and things like that.
We've got to play it as well properly,
Indeed. So here is the plan. This month's podcast is we're obviously going to talk about Age of Sigmar 2nd edition. We're going to talk about things that have either been revealed or leaked and what we're thinking about them and how they affect our armies because there's loads more information now than we had this time last month and also what we've been up to and that kind of thing. But then we are going to go away for a couple of weeks. Obviously, Age of Sigmar 2nd edition is going to come out. We're going to read other things and build the models, and we've both been working on new additions to the armies and things. And then we're going to play a big old game, probably the first proper game in the new narrative campaign, with Age of Sigmar 2nd edition and Endless Spells and all of that stuff, and do probably mid-month in July a Age of Sigmar special edition, 2nd edition special.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
That's very excited.
And then at the end, regular pod service continues when we just probably keep talking about Age of Sigmar.
I think if
definitely
we didn't do it this way, we'd end up with a 10-hour long podcast. The month after this, where we just literally have to cover so much ground. Yeah. So we'll break it up and we want to kind of like go deep when we can, you know.
Yeah, consider this podcast probably the first part of a 3-part, 10-hour Age of Sigmar 2nd edition
extravaganza.
With last month's 3.5-hour podcast acting as a kind of prologue that also touched on things like, but it's interesting because obviously this has really dominated the news cycle for a lot of different things. Like last month, one of the reasons our podcast was so long is because there was so much news. There was X-Wing 2.0, Adeptus Titanicus, and the announcement of this. Whereas for me, 40K's had a relatively quiet month. Knights Codex came out, but I don't think either of us have really to say about it other than
cool.
Yeah.
Knights are cool.
But every day there's been some new AOS thing, and as the copies of the core set and the books and things have arrived in stores, everything's leaked in terms of points and mechanics and things.
Yeah.
So just now I'm just at the champing at the bit, wanting the app builder to be wanting the army builder app to be updated actually, so that I can start theory crafting without having to use a pen and paper like I'm at school again. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, the list building element of things is going to change enormously. That's thanks, the last sort of 100, 200 points in your list you can put that into so many different things now.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out where to start with this stuff. And I think that's maybe an interesting, so I think we should always try and link stuff back to our actual armies because that's sort of what's most relevant to us. But you're right. One big change for me between the command point change and the ability to buy command points for 50 points, the costs of the endless spells have been revealed, and they range from 20 points to 60, 80 points.
Yeah.
To triumphs, which still existed, like getting a buff for having less points than your opponent.
I don't think we've ever remembered.
No, you and I have never remembered. An opponent remembered at a tournament I went to.
Yeah.
I was like, you Warhammer wizard.
Yeah.
You've remembered you get to have free rerolls to hit for a turn or whatever. List building feels so much deeper because of that almost alone, because different armies require different things out of those, and therefore different armies have different uses for the last chunk of points, which almost also accounts for where battalions previously would have been as well, like bonuses for taking particular sets of units. Yeah. It feels like there's a sort of 4 or 5 way trade-off now.
Like, do you want that endless spell? Do you want a couple of endless spells to round that out? Or do you want that extra command point so that one of your sub-heroes can use not only just a command ability they might have on their war scroll, but one of the 3 new command abilities, which are really good. Like, they make it easier to run further. They make it easier to charge. And as a Stormcast player who has failed a lot of charges in my time, this is is literally a game changer.
And let's not forget how many ones you roll when Liberators run somewhere.
Exactly, yeah. The huffiest, puffiest, slowest Liberators in all of the realms. I've snake-eyed on my Prime so often. I love the idea that he could come down and that he can command point himself and kind of psych himself up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, come on, you can do this.
Particularly because so to clarify, there are essentially 3 new command abilities, but one of them is a reworked Inspiring Presence.
Yes.
And they are much more reactive than they used to be. So Inspiring Presence, I think we mentioned this last month, but Inspiring Presence is now used in the Battle Shock phase. So you know if a unit is likely to face a nasty Battle Shock before you choose whether to buy them out of it, basically. Yeah. The run roll, the definitely do a 6 when you run thing is done after you've rolled. So you can roll and go, I don't want to go 1, I want to go 6. Yeah. And the same is true of the charge as well. It's, you don't set it to a particular value, but you do re-roll it. So that is that hero going
just bellowing.
Come on.
I love the idea of, especially in the Battle Shock phase, using Inspiring Presence, is the idea that a general sees a unit faltering and then just calls out something really inspiring to them. And
I was going to say dabs.
He just dabs and then they're like, okay, we're in it, we're fine.
Yeah.
That's more cinematic to me, actually. And more interesting in the game as well. Like it stops Battleshock from being too like swingy, I think.
Yeah, you're right. I think maybe in order to talk about the mechanical aspects of this, the mind's eye sense of it is a lot more important. Like, the previous inspiring presence is like, this unit, this turn happens to be inspired by this guy. No one else gives a shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like the character is trying to impress this particular unit because they're vulnerable, which is what you just said.
Yeah.
But
he's just flexing near them.
Yeah.
They're like, they just notice that
guy.
and they just love it.
Yeah. But the rest of your army doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, that is strange. Yeah, the idea he calls out and just kind of boosts their morale for Sigmar or whatever, you know.
Yeah, and I
really the faithful.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like the way it changes the ecosystem of command abilities as well, because it means that like, so the Lord the Tantress command ability that makes Stormcast immune to Battleshock is very points efficient if you think you're going to take
a lot of damage.
A lot of damage spread out across a lot of units.
Yeah.
But it's not an auto cast anymore.
No.
Because in some cases you might be worth saving it to see if any of your units take a hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really great for the Lord Aquila, who's the Vanguard leader, because his command ability lets him pull a unit and just vanish off the board and come on another board edge. And previously you'd have to make him your general to be able to do that, but now you can spend a command point and just do a kind of crazy, you know, awesome.
Is it any Stormcast unit?
I think it's got to be a Vanguard.
Right.
There's a specific list, so it's got to be either like Eighth Strike or sort of long strikes or, chickens, paladors, or hunters. So it's got to be a Vanguard. Otherwise it'd be crazy. It's like, these retributors are over here now.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's just within.
Get on board the chicken, man. They're all piling on.
Yeah. So I love that because it unlocks a lot of, I mean, that's just for Stormcast, and Stormcast don't even have that many specialist command abilities, but some armies have loads, and it's going to be really interesting for people playing those armies.
So in terms of this, there's a lot, this does introduce a lot of potential jank to the game. I feel like there's a lot to be clarified. So the General's Handbook hasn't been like fully kind of poured over yet, nor has any kind of day one FAQs or anything like that.
Yeah.
There are definitely things in the game at the moment that feel like you and I wouldn't encounter them because we're not likely to try and pull this kind of thing in a game we play.
Yeah.
But, you know, I remember the thing it reminds me of is when the Disciples of Tzeentch book was revealed on the Warhammer Live stream, they got a couple of rules quite wrong in ways that made it seem even better than it is.
Right.
So one of them was like using Destiny dice to set mortal wounds on spells. That was the reason I thought you could do that. It's not in the book. It's just that's how they did it on the stream.
Right,
and they were like talking, not just doing it in games, but talking about it. Like, this means when you cast a D6 mortal wound spell, you can guarantee you're killing a hero. That kind of thing. Not how it works. Not how it was written to work. They clarified it in FAQ. But I don't think it'd ever been the intent. And so because these mistakes creep in and because people at the moment are assembling the rules out of kind of what's been said as well as what's written, I think there are some things that have been misunderstood or aren't going to quite work, the way that we think. But some of the things so far are amazing. So like, for example, there's been several instances in the way they've revealed the rules that suggest that you can use a command ability as many times as you have command points. And you can even keep reapplying it to the same unit. So, that doesn't do anything if your command ability is this unit can reroll failed charges or something, because it will only ever trigger once.
Yeah.
But there is a Grot war boss, a Moon Clan Goblin war boss, whose command ability, doubles the damage of a given unit of Moon Clan Grots.
Right.
So what you can do is take 60 of them in a single unit.
Yeah.
Save up, get whatever other battle line you need. Then, this is obviously very all in, but you can then, spend the rest of your points on just 1 billion command points, or whatever, 6 command points, spend 300, 400 points on command points for turn 1. Then if you get turn 1, you use some of those command points to make sure you get a run and charge. There are other destruction moves and stuff you can do.
Yeah.
Run and charge. And each of those grots, 60 grots will only has maybe 3 attacks each. And they're going to be like hitting on 5s, wounding on 5s at no rend. But if the command abilities stack, then you enter a logarithmic scale where if any of those attacks go through, each individual attack does 64 damage, 128 damage.
Yeah.
So you can you end up with this one punch goblin kind of situation where an individual goblin goes, eh! And like Archaon just blows up 8 times over.
Yeah, there's no way that won't get hacked.
But the thing is, I think it almost doesn't need to in a way because it's so broken. Like it's not like it would ever really work in a tournament, I don't think, because if you don't get turn 1 or whatever, then you are just 60 goblins. And if anyone snipes that hero, you're just some goblins.
Yeah. I think there's definitely going to be loads of, so the General's Handbook, and I believe introduces like dozens and dozens of new artifacts.
Oh shit, there's so much stuff like that. Yeah.
And the malign, sorcery, I believe it has different spell laws for different realms and stuff.
Yeah.
And there are like quite deep rules for each realm now. It's always been part of Age of Sigmar, but they're really kind of doubling down on that. And it's going to be at the intersection of all of that new stuff is going to create some like total horseshit on the kind of competitive scene, frankly.
Yeah. Normal horse shit.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty gruesome out there. It's going to be very entertaining to watch. I can't wait to see what people come up with. But for us, it's great because we can just pick and choose whatever we want. I'll be very interested to see what tournaments decide to keep and what they decide to let.
What's interesting is it's sort of a split system. And so last time I was wondering, like, you know, how much of these rules are going to be adopted by that scene.
Yeah.
So there are two parts to that system when it comes to realms specifically. So each of the books has something with realms in it. Like, you know, I think the core book has the realm specific rules.
It does.
And then the artifacts are split between Malign Sorcery and the General's Handbook. But there are two factors. There is the realm where the battle is taking place, and there is the realm your army is from. And the realm your army is from is a list building decision, which gives you access to artifacts from that realm. So you bring them with you wherever you go. The realm where it's taking place affects certain battle conditions. So, for example, in the Malign Portents book earlier this year, there were the rules for fighting in Shyish, which we played with when we played our game. You know, like the command ability that lets you siphon wounds from other units and things like that. That's all still in the game. And those are actually, that was just a preview of those rules for Shyish. So the realm that the battle is taking place in gives you 7 extra spells, because it's 1 in the core book plus 6 from Malign Sorcery. And new command abilities and table-wide effects, which happen in addition to specific scenery effects. Yeah. So there's loads of stuff. My guess is that the majority of tournaments will probably let players bring armies from a specific realm, but won't specify realms for tables. Because that might end up really swingy for certain armies.
Especially because the endless spells have a lot of interesting effects. So probably the most controversial one eventually will be the mirrors. Yeah. And you set them up in different parts of the board, and it lets you throw spells into one mirror and it comes out of the other mirror. Yeah. Which is awesome. Like, that's such a good idea for a spell. However, it's so open to abuse when you have so many new spells coming into the game. And especially because in some, like, I believe each can place that anywhere if they want to.
No, it's if the battle is taking place in the realm of shadow.
I see.
It can be placed anywhere.
Okay, yeah. So that's where that becomes insane.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So, like, this is another one of those examples of, like, the more I've looked into it, the more I appreciate some of the design stuff with that, because I've had a chance to see some of this stuff. So the mirrors are a really interesting one. The Umbral Spell Portal. David, his full name. So in order to cast a spell through it, you need to be within an inch of it. Okay. So you have to cast the first one on yourself. And then unless you are fighting in the realm of shadow, the second one has to be within 18 inches of the first one. Okay. So it kind of does what the Bellwind Vortex used to do. It doubles the spell range of most 18-inch spells. Yeah. Like, so it's very, very good for Tzeentch, because it replaces, the Bellwind has changed quite substantially, which I've, now seen what it does. It's been reined in, basically, quite substantially. But also, without destroying its essence. Yeah. You still go up on a tornado. Yeah.
It still looks rad.
Yeah. It can just be dispelled now. Yeah. And if, when it's dispelled, you redeploy the wizard somewhere in range. But if there's nowhere for the wizard to deploy, the wizard is killed. So if you mob the bottom of the vortex, because there's no limit on getting close to it now. It doesn't obscure movement. So if you can mob units around it, then dispel it, you can just dunk a wizard and kill them, which is very fun. But yeah, so the thing about the interesting interaction with the portals is, so in order to cast a spell through it aggressively, you need to place it next to your wizard or wizards. If you want to turn one, have loads of wizards all ganging up to throw spells through it, you need to plan that when you deploy them. There are some interesting Tzeentch things that interact with that, which is cool. Like there's may get to that, but and then you need to pick a point and all the spells come from that point, which is interesting because you can have multiple wizards pouring spells through it. But your second point of casting measuring range is going to be at a fixed point that you can't move. Yeah. Manually, if you are the owner of the spell portal, you can only remove it or unbind it yourself at the beginning of your hero phase. So you can't open it, pour magic through it, and then close it again. Okay. And that means that your opponent is guaranteed at least one turn to try and get to it, to throw spells back the other way or unbind it.
Yeah.
If you open the other half within 18 inches of an enemy wizard, then it is definitely within 30 inches of them, so they can definitely try and unbind it whenever they like.
Yeah.
But the really cool thing, and this was the sort of exploding brain version of this for me, is I realized this makes certain endless spells way more important than they'd otherwise be. Because everyone has sort of gravitated towards the utility spells, like the cogs and the cogs that speed up time and the spell portal and the Balewind still. Because people are used to that kind of utility ultimately winning more games than like a big moon that eats people or whatever.
Yeah.
But actually, the best counter to the portal is a predatory endless spell. Because, if, let's say you do this to me, you set up a mirror next to one of your wizards, which you'll have very soon.
Hooray.
So you can throw a spell into my lines, right? Then, and let's say you're smart about it. So you make sure you want to hit one of my wizards with it because I'm playing Tzeentch and everything's a wizard. But you set it up 18 inches from my wizards. Which means that you can throw spells through it happily, and there's basically no way I can get to it to cast spells back the other way. Because unless I get a double turn, I'm unlikely to move 18 inches to then be within an inch of it at the start of my hero phase.
Yes.
Right? I can't cast spells whenever. However, if a predatory spell ends its move within a certain distance of the spell portal, it gets pulled through the spell portal and goes out the other side. Yeah. Which means my only way to threaten you without moving is to have a predatory spell, which I then cast close to the mirror, move into the mirror, and then because you've had to put your wizards within an inch of it to see through it, there's nothing they can do about it.
That's like imagine the scene. Yeah. a bunch of wizards crowded around this giant mirror, and then suddenly
the moon comes
the
through
giant purple sun of Shyish comes out and turns them all to amethyst.
Better thing about that is I can unbind it whenever I like. I just have to give up a spellcasting attempt.
Yes.
So I can throw something through it. Let's say you get the first turn of the game and you set up the mirror. On my second turn, I can then throw the Moon of Death through it and then close it.
Yes.
And then you've got a Moon of Death presumably on your back line.
Yeah.
For the rest of the game or until you
get to move it, right? So the thing about endless spells is that both players get to move.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, where are you going to move it?
It's in your back line.
You've got to move it off the board, right? You've got to
exactly.
Shunt it off into the wilderness and off it goes on its merry way
free,
forever.
Lassie. Exactly.
Be free, giant purple moon of Shyish.
Yeah. So when all of those different interactions clicked for me, I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. Like, this is...
It's super cinematic as well.
Yeah.
But I think, there's some interesting jankiness around endless spells not being able to sit on top of units and sort of bumping into units and not being able to fit almost because they're on quite large bases.
Some of them are massive.
Yeah, some of them are huge. So most of the time, like, if you get a purple Sun of Shyish through that portal, you may not be able to set it up on the other side most of the time if it's in the middle of an enemy army just because of the size of the base and the fact it's got to fit in there. So it's kind of...
It'd be interesting to see if there's any clarity about that in the rules.
Yeah, I think so. Like, if you can't pass over a unit, does that mean you don't move? Do you just bump into them? Because that's not supposed to be how the spells really work. They're supposed to be like these sort of tornadoes that blow through stuff.
The Death Moon doesn't get out of the way. Like, oh, sorry, I'll start here.
Yeah, excuse me. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't elbowing his way through a unit. It's like, it just like goes through that thing and kills those people. And it doesn't feel like the rules quite work that way from what I've read so far, but it'd be interesting to see clarification.
I suspect you'll see a lot of people using it's like, so some things have to move in a particular way, like in a straight line, whatever. Other things just have to make a move. So I think you'll probably see a lot of people going like, well, I'm going to move 3 inches into your unit and then 3 inches back out again.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Like, and say where I am.
Just because it rotates, basically.
Yeah, exactly. This good ball of death.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's loads of really cool things. Like, I think the guillotine's really solid.
Yeah, I like the guillotine a lot.
Oh, sorry, the pendulum.
Yeah, that's the thing that goes in the straight line. You pick a direction for it, and your opponent can move it, but only backwards or forwards along that direction. Yeah. Which is that's like a skill shot across the enemy.
Unless you cast a spell portal in front of it. On your turn.
Yes. Can that change its direction then?
Yeah, because you just place the other one so that it comes out somewhere else, and then you determine which direction it goes from the other side.
So you set it against setting it up.
Yeah, because you set it up again. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's sweet. That's awesome.
And then your opponent sets a spell portal to try and move it, and
it's
then
like a giant game of horrible pinball.
Yeah, exactly.
Which everybody dies.
I was thinking that because like things like the new the Celestar Ballista, the Stormcast Ballista, which is very powerful. It's basically a Judicated Prime lying sideways.
It is.
On
and
steroids.
It's supposed to be 100 points as well, so it's 60 points cheaper than a unit Judicators, which is interesting. More vulnerable, but interesting.
But because it gets a really big bonus for being in cover, it's going to be the kind of model you want to set up, but not move. and it's very powerful, long ranged and things. And I really like the idea that a counter to like entrenched siege weaponry is like the pendulum that you set up at the start of the game, and it's going there eventually. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you really love being behind that wall or something, or on top of that hill, but the big metal pendulum is coming, and everybody's jumping.
Yeah, the cover rules for the, because it is explicitly written into the wall scroll of that baluster that they get extra cover bonuses for being in cover. And that makes me think there's more kind of scenery coming for, that will be like wider and flatter and more like battlements or something.
It's really interesting. The core rules, which are now out. So I read them as being a bit more encouraging of possibly the way you and I would always interpret cover. Like, this basically counts. Like, this is reasonably in cover.
Yeah.
I need to read them again. I have them in front of me, unfortunately, but I remember thinking that when I saw them, that like, hang on, this feels less like, I suspect that in a tournament, people are still going to insist on every millimeter of every model has to be on the piece of terrain for it to count.
Right.
But it felt more inclusive of like, if this model is reasonably in cover and you can't see more than half of it, then it's in cover.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, this should be interesting.
That'd be good.
Yeah. So, oh man, we're jumping around. So that was the realm stuff is really interesting. I think, it'll be interesting because, so like, we've traditionally played almost all of our games in the realm of metal or realm of fire, because that's kind of like what I built my board to look like. Yeah. And, you know, I think one of the interesting things about the realm rules is I don't like, you know, whether or not we use them is sort of a story decision to some extent. And I think one thing I'd like to do is find a mechanism by which a narrative campaign, which there's a lot more support for now, including special rules for narrative campaigns, which is really nice. Yeah. Moves around between the realms quite a lot, rather than like, you know, as we did last time, like a campaign to take a particular city, for example, because I think that way you have more interesting games as you're both asked to deal with different scenarios. Yeah. So like I've seen the realm rules for Shaman now, the realm of metal, and there are things that are going to be very good. I think it ultimately end up fair, but there are things that Stormcaster hate about that, because there are things that penalize you for having really heavy metal armor.
Oh yeah.
Because, you can reduce saves. You can, I think there's a spell that reduces your movement speed based on how good your save is. Right. So if you're not wearing any metal, it's fine, but all the metal's getting heavier, that's cool. Which is really themey and cool, like a really cool way of manipulating the wind of metal. Yeah. But I can imagine me being like, all of my guys are wearing loincloths. Hooray!
And it's a naked siege army. Exactly. 100 miles an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's super cool. They seem pretty strong. So there's a rule in, actually it's a realm of fire, isn't it? Where if you're shooting...
Actually, I think you'll find.
Actually, and thou shalt know that, shots that travel more than 12 inches gain an extra rend because they catch fire in midair, which means Judicators are insane.
Yeah. Like, Berserping horror.
They're like rend 2, like,
yeah, true.
Lord of Change is even more trouble than they were before.
Yeah.
So they do seem pretty strong with the realm rules, and, definitely fun for narrative play, but if you're for more competitive, play a bit too much, I think. Possibly, yeah. At least in that regard. Like, there's a rule in the realm of beasts, I think, which is like after the command phase. Yeah. After the combat phase, you roll a dice, and on a 6, the combat phase happens again. Oh, yeah, I saw that. Yeah. So it's like, Khorne just is very, very happy with it. Yeah, so is Iron Jaws or something. It's kind of a cool idea that certain factions would be very strong in certain realms, because it just, it fits with their ethos and the way that their whole philosophy, the whole deal. But yeah, interesting from a rules perspective. There's some really nice stuff. Like, I really like that the realm specific artifacts, give me a chance to, like, patch up weaknesses in characters. Like, I've seen, like, cause they're generic in an interesting way. So there's something like, the stuff like, there's a Shaman specific relic, cause I looked at the stuff that was specific to, I had a peek at the stuff that was specific to my guys, basically. Yeah. There's one that is like an alchemist's amulet that gives a character an unbind, which you'd think as Tzeentch, I'm up to my neck in unbinds anyway. But one of the things that means is that it's a really big deal to take a character without one, particularly because I've got things like Destiny dice. Like, Tzeentch is better unbinding on balance than like any other character in the game, short of Nagash, really. Like, and that should be a strength of the army. Like, it's really hard to be better at magic than the magic Tzeentch,
army.
For sure, yeah.
But that means that something like a Fate Master that have gone down in points because they're the melee Tzeentch hero. They're the only like non-wizard Tzeentch hero. Giving them something to participate in that phase is actually quite a big deal. Yeah. And it allows them to interact with battalions in more interesting ways. And there's like, Tzeentch on the whole doesn't have access to a lot of rend. like, cause you got mortal wounds.
Right.
But one of the shaman artifacts is a weapon that just changes one of their weapons to have -3 rend, which is suddenly nuts, cause it's like, oh shit, a lot of this stuff was sort of inconceived with like high damage but low rend or something. Again, a Fate Master's a perfect example of this, cause it's like good character, hard to shift, but like they need a little bit of something. They've always needed a little bit of something. So suddenly this is a flying 16-inch movement, -3 rend hero.
Yeah, nice.
Is like a lot
bit of combat threat all
tastier.
of a
Yeah,
sudden.
and also it gives, I think the other reason I like it is it means that I can pick something from my army that isn't just all wizards all day, every day, wizards, because it's like, yeah, all it is a table of generic items, but that's kind of what the game needed, I think, like something to create a grey area between armies.
Yeah, mix things up. And yeah, I'm really excited. Hopefully going to try and get some mortal wound saves on my Stormcast with some artifacts. 'Cause that's what they hate.
Have you actually thought about where the lore hunters are from?
I mean, it's kind of weird with Stormcast because they're all from Azir, right?
Right, yeah.
So it feels like they're kind of tied into that. Like you could make an argument that the hunters have been living in the realm so long that they've adapted.
Well, I suppose it reflects which artifacts you have. So it's stuff you've gotten from a realm.
Yeah.
Right? And they're literally artifact hunters. So
That's very true.
Yeah.
I've just painted up like a brother and sister hero who are part of a chamber that operates in Shaiish, for example. And
Yeah.
Like, so from a narrative perspective, maybe if they wanted to, they could take some Shaiish out.
I think it'd be reasonable for you to flip around, to be honest. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to stick with Shimon. But
the lore hunters, they go everywhere. The whole point, if there's some magic shit to be stolen and appropriated, they're going to do that. That's the
part of me feels like it's almost like it's a reward for converting, but basically a reward for basing. It's like you just put a big like metal rock on your base. You're from the wrong metal now.
right, yeah.
Like, is that a cog? Good.
I'm really glad I went with some neutral basing that could be in a lot of different realms rather than going like full Gairan or something.
Yeah, it could be a wasteland in the realm of metal. It could be ash in the realm of fire. It could be a car park in the realm of life.
Yeah, any of those. So it's going to be interesting to see how this affects our army specifically.
Yeah.
Especially the point changes, and Tzeentch's in particular had a massive overhaul.
Well, yeah, so that, I think almost that is related to one of the biggest changes, which is reinforcement points and summoning.
Of course.
I don't know if you want to get into that now. Well, maybe we should. Like, so, this is, I'm really happy about this, although it's like, so Tzeentch has been probably quite substantially nerfed so to the extent that it's a different army now, which is great because it's closer to the army I want, I think, than the army I sort of accidentally got. Cause I got Tzeentch before Battle Tome, right? I was into Tzeentch because I like the models, I like the fiction. I'll take whatever rules they give me basically for these wizards. So this is probably the last massive change we didn't really discuss last time because I don't think it was revealed last time.
Yeah.
So summoning of all kinds is now completely free. Which is on first glance bananas because, this is old school AOS issues with exploitation of rules that allow you to have a freeloader change every turn and all this stuff. There's all of this, sort of, like there's been issues in the past with how ambiguous the rules for horror splitting are. And it's been a huge mess in the past because there are loads of heroes in the game, particularly in Chaos. And that's because Chaos tends to have a monopoly on people turning into Gribbly Tentacle monsters that are rules you just don't use. So to even get out of the Tzeentch bucket for a bit, the Chaos Lord on foot, which I got to paint for fun, has a rule where when he dies, he turns into a Chaos Spawn. Because that's kind of the fate of a lord who's failed. The idea is that he stepped out in front of the gods of chaos and said, I'm going to win a great battle for you. And if he fails, he turns into a spawn because that's what happens. But if he kills the enemy general, he turns into a demon prince.
Oh, right.
So, like, that's the gamble. So this model is supposed to contain two other models, basically,
really cool.
implicitly.
That's really cool.
That the rule's always been there.
Yeah.
But no one would ever use it because you'd
just
have to either you'd have to put 50 points aside for the Chaos Spawn, or you'd have to put closer to like 180 points aside for a demon prince. And you're not going to do that.
Never going to happen.
Because it's such an edge case. So, on a basic level, summoning being free makes loads of stuff interesting again. Because, that character has actually had a points increase. Even though nothing's really changed about them, because this character is now guaranteed to contain an extra 50-point model.
Right.
And may contain, if you play your cards right, a 180-point bonus hero.
Yeah.
Obviously you replace the basic hero. But at that point, fair enough, you earned that. What goes from being, oh, that's cute, but it's an edge case, it'll never happen, it's not worth the points, goes to being, oh, that's an interesting edge case. But if I can pull it off, my 2,000 point army has become a 2,180 point army.
Yeah, and what a story that creates as well, you know. If you manage to actually maneuver it and get that off, and also it's the most chaos thing. It's just a great, again, it's about how that looks in your mind's eye. And because playing the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And because Tzeentch is the god of turning stuff into other stuff, there's lots of stuff like this in the Tzeentch book that I've never used. So we discussed this before. Ogrod thaumaturges were already underrated.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
They are, I've almost through gritted teeth watched the Tzeentch forum people now realize how good they are.
Right.
Because that D6 mortal wound spell he has creates pink horrors. That's what it has always done. For every mortal wound it does, even if it doesn't kill something, you create a pink horror. That's fucking incredible now. It's so good. He's gone up in points as a consequence.
Yeah.
Because every time he shoots somebody, he invents a wizard.
Yeah.
So that he's now like a priority target. Like he is like an escalation. He costs the same as Demon Prince for a reason.
Yeah. It's interesting, that because I remember you ran him in that tournament and you've run him really successfully against me as well.
Yeah.
Royd. He's really punchy in combat. He's very, very good.
He's very good. He's the best Tzeentch melee hero. But
yeah, by a long way. And it's weird that you didn't see him more often. I think it's because people got fixated on Skyfires and
mortal wound spam.
Mortal wound spam, which is obviously, you know, the army's good at. But I think it's good to have that variety of punches in your army, different types of punch. And
also, like, his ability, like, that ability just becomes a little bit more interesting. Likewise, the sort of generic Tzeentch wizard hero is called a Magister. I have one, but I've never used it. Cause he's only all right, and it's not good enough to be all right in that army, really. He has a spell, that does, I think, D3 mortal wounds, and then for every model killed, you roll a dice, and on a 4-up, they turn into a chaos spawn, which is super themey. But previously, you'd like take 100 points reinforcements and think about, oh, maybe if I get this a couple of times in a game, that'll be fun. But I've already you're paying 100 points for potential chaos spawn, and you're probably just going to put that on a Balewind Vortex in the end.
Yeah.
So the notion that those chaos spawn become free, like, that's super cool. That means like, shit, like, that accounts for weaknesses elsewhere in the army, which we can get to. But like, that I really, really like. Now, the big sort of army spanning changes, and this is a huge deal for anyone who has a god-specific chaos army, is that every chaos god now has a specific way of earning a special points system.
Yeah.
So Khorne has Blood Tithe points, Nurgle has Growing the Garden points, basically. Slaanesh has excess points, which are earned every time a unit takes wounds without dying.
Right.
So one wound models aren't very interesting to Slaanesh, but whenever your heroes take a little bit of chip damage or their heroes take a bit of chip damage, you get points.
Nice.
And it's the edging points, basically.
Yeah.
It's
great.
But it means that like it suddenly becomes really dangerous to like chip away at a Keeper of Secrets. Because
he's giving them so many points.
Yeah, he's going to be very happy about that. Or she's going to be very happy about that.
Yeah.
They're going to be very happy about that. And so, and for Tzeentch, it's whenever a spell is successfully cast by anybody.
Yeah. They
get a point. And at the end of your movement phase, which is a very crucial window, you can cash in your points to summon demons for free. If 36 spells are cast in a game, I can have a free Lord of Change.
Yeah.
No questions asked. That's a lot of spells. You know, that's 2 spells, 2 players casting a lot of spells every turn.
Yeah.
You can play for it, but difficult to get. Whereas, like, for example, the Khorne one will happen anyway, because Khorne gets points when units die. So that will happen. You know, like, Tzeentch has to play for it a bit, but it's appropriate that they should.
Yeah.
And this is really cool, because I think it changes the dynamic of playing its chaos quite a lot. It becomes not just, you have to understand that the army you're looking at isn't the army you might be facing if you don't have a plan for playing around the condition that makes their god more powerful, which I really like as a mechanic.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? Really gives, really brings out the sense of identity in those different forces. It's going to be interesting because a lot of the kind of artwork around the chaos has been around the Everchosen as well. Archaeum has taken a points drop, if these leaks are correct.
Yeah.
And, it seems like I'd be very interested to see what the Everchosen's equivalent of that is, like kind of in between of gods. Maybe they don't have one. Maybe they don't get everyone's boon.
Yeah, Slaves of Darkness and Everchosen, I don't believe get this, but they do have access to obviously like free Chaos Spawn and things from other sources.
Yeah, I can foresee a future where there's like an Everchosen battle tome or something that gives them their own thing, you know.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Where they take kind of curses from different chaos gods as well as, you know, boons, because they're massive traitors.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that'd be really neat. But yeah, so this is, a lot of like stuff have been rebalanced based on their summoning potential. So, pretty substantial points changes to account for this, but I really like it. So the downside to this system, I think, is in terms of, I'm very lucky. I feel about this the same way I feel about other changes that in the past that have sort of like played into how I was already doing things. I'm very lucky to be someone who built a Tzeentch demon army and then started a mortal army. Because it means that my mortal army, as it grows, has all of the demon sideboard I will ever need.
Yeah.
I have every demon unit in numbers, in decent numbers. So, I will never, because there's a risk. So if you don't have any, for example, let's say you've only ever had Tzeentch mortals. If you don't have any Tzeentch demons, then as you play, you are earning points you can't spend. And all of your units have gotten more expensive because of a benefit you can't use. So I would say that for the god-specific chaos armies, it's slightly different for Khorne because you can use the blood tithe points for other things. You can use them from unbinds and bonuses and things, or use them for demons. But sometimes a free unit of bloodletters or a free bloodthirster is going to be the thing you really need.
Yeah.
So, and you're paying points for that and you're not getting it. So for me, it feels like the start collecting demons box for each god has become a kind of almost mandatory bolt-on to a chaos, for a god-specific chaos army.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, to be honest, I think they previously basically were because they tend to be the best units in any of the armies. That's true of all of them. Bloodletters are better than Blood Warriors most of the time.
Yeah.
Plague Bearers are one of the best infantry units in the game. Pink Horrors are one of the best battle line units in the game. Demonettes and Slanesh has always been a kind of dark horse kind of powerhouse in some ways. Yeah. So, but I can understand people being upset that it feels mandatory.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then, same goes for undead as well.
Yeah.
They're going to have to be summoning, not zombies because they're terrible, but as many skeletons and chain rasp hordes as they can, and they're going to need those models, for sure. And, I definitely don't feel that Burner's Stormcast player because that's not what the Stormcast army is about at all, really.
Yeah.
It's not something I have to worry about, but you are looking at spending an extra sort of £50 to £100 for, depending on what your army is supposed to do.
Yeah.
To actually make it competitive.
I think the reason there's not been more of a kind of hullabaloo necessarily is because, for example, if you are a Tzeentch player, you probably have some pink horrors. You probably have a lot of change. You might not have any screamers, which are some of the cheaper things you can buy with summoning points, but holding on for pink horrors might make sense because of the way pink horrors work now.
Yeah.
So I'm happy because it's how I'd like my army to work. It seems more themey and it plays into what I've already got, but I can totally understand.
Yeah. I guess, the counterpoint is that, as pink horrors have gone up to 200 points now.
Yeah.
So you'd run fewer pink horrors anyway. So that kind of creates a little sideboard for you, perhaps.
Yes. That's a really interesting sort of, change actually. So, because again, I think since it came in, the rule about pink horror splitting has been really difficult to balance.
Never been quite right, has it?
Never been quite right. At the moment, you have to buy the points in advance for them to split into blue and then brimstone horrors. The way they've changed it, which I really like, both from a balance point of view, basically changes what the unit is. So now, when a pink horror dies, you can choose to make a revenge attack where you roll a dice on a 6, the enemy takes a mortal wound for every pink horror that's died. As in you roll a dice for every pink horror that's died. Or you can gain 2 blue horror points. And when a blue horror dies, you get 1 brimstone horror point. And you keep a track of how many of those points you have. And then when you would otherwise be trying to summon a unit of blue horrors or brimstone horrors, you can pay their specific points instead of the generic fate points that you're earning by casting spells.
Yeah. It's like its own mini economy, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's more stuff to track, obviously. But that crucially means that the splitting doesn't happen when pink horrors die, which is what is previous, and kind of what the fiction always is. They've actually rewritten the fiction slightly. So the idea is the demonic energy of the horrors dissipates and then regroups somewhere. So rather than it literally splitting in half, that energy is kind of enters the ether, and then a wizard can kind of pull it together to create the blue horrors. But that means that indefinitely tar pitting somebody with a unit of pink horrors that becomes 20 blue horrors, etc., doesn't work anymore. Because when those units are summoned, they have to be summoned within 12 inches of a hero and more than 9 inches away from enemy models.
Yeah. So it's like any other summoning for the most part.
Yeah. So it changes the role of the unit completely, but it does mean that each unit of pink horrors, this is the other thing, the revenge attack isn't very good. It's okay for blue horrors because a lot of them could die at once and maybe you don't care about brimstones. But, you really want the points. So it means that if you have like, again, I feel so lucky that I painted 20 blue horrors, 20 brimstone horrors, because that's probably about the amount you need.
Yeah.
But I think that's almost like an additional tax on Tzeentch now. Like, if you don't have blue and brimstones, you're really missing out, and you're paying so many points. You're paying 200 points for 10 wounds. But, well, it's the difference between paying 200 points for 10 wounds and paying 200 points for 50 wounds.
Yeah.
With no points different.
Yeah, for sure. You've got to have them. Otherwise, you just don't take the pink horrors, right? You just take some of the infantry. That's much cheaper.
No, it's not much cheaper. That's the really thing. So, like,
it's just more expensive.
Everything is more expensive now. Like, my army's got, like, my 4.3 thousand points of Tzeentch has become 5,000 points of Tzeentch.
Yeah.
Right. But that's what's really interesting about it. So, like, Carrick Acolytes went down, and now they are the cheap battle line option for Tzeentch. They're 80 points each.
Yeah, it seems about right.
Which is good.
Yeah.
They needed a job, and their job is being less expensive than Zangor.
Yeah.
Zangor went up.
Bodies, which is what they are. Like, they're supposed to be, called, they're not there, yes. They're not, haven't received Tzeentch's blessing properly, but they're trying to impress.
They're just big, swole boys that love wizards.
Yeah.
Which I can relate to half of. And then, but yeah, so everything's sort of changing up, but I really trying to get a holistic view of it, and I don't think I will until we've played.
No.
But, I think Tzeentch particularly, to wrap up before we move on to Stormcast, is in a really interesting position now where you have to really consider what the strengths and benefits of the army already are. It's very, very, very expensive to build any of the Tzeentch battalions now. Right. Really hard.
Yeah.
And also both Brimstone Horrors and Blue Horrors doubled in points cost to buy them out of the gate. So if you just want Brimstone Horrors at the start of the game, act as a screen, for example, that's like, they were 40 points, they're now 70. Right. So it's not quite doubled, but Blues have doubled from 50 to 100, which is a big deal, because previously they were like the cheap includes in a change host, for example. And so change hosts have functionally gotten a huge amount more expensive and quite hard to get into.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Lords of Change have gone up by 80 points.
Yeah.
Which is a massive increase.
That's a huge increase.
And also there are other subtler changes, like the minimum matched play unit size for a unit of Chaos Marauders has gone up from 10 models to 20. And what that means is that what was previously a source of cheap battle line for very min-maxy Chaos armies that would take like Archaon, some Greater Demons, and 3 blocks of 10 Marauders to meet battle line isn't possible anymore. So again, all these little changes mean that you have to make much harder decisions. And I think the interesting one is, when I first started looking at it, I was like, I want command points. I want to spend money on command points. I want to spend money on endless spells, which feels like a gimme for Tzeentch.
Yeah.
But actually, I really have to pick between those things. Yeah. Because, like, my units are so expensive that, and so in danger. Like, they die. You know what I mean? Like, pink horrors aren't gaining a 4-up invulnerable save against everything like they have in 40k, right? They will still just vanish sometimes, when some fulminators look at them funny. And that's a huge investment. That's not to say it's a balance issue because they're so good, but like, you're paying money for stuff that might just vanish, and you have to trust that you'll get it back somewhere else.
It's going to be very difficult for Tzeentch to maintain table presence in terms of capturing objectives with so many fewer models on the table, especially because they're so squishy. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I wonder if a lot of Tzeentch players will ally in a big block of something with 200 points just to kind of just cap stuff.
I think Chaos Warriors are looking quite good for Tzeentch. There's a few things that are looking interesting. But what's interesting is I realized that, like, I really want to take command points because I really want that, like, Zangor can run and charge, for example.
They've got tactical decisions on.
Yeah. So if you use some of the movement enhancing stuff like the cogs and you have command points, you can guarantee you can give a block of Zangor, which is what I've been working on, like an insane threat range because you can also use Destiny dice to set charges. So if you got 2 Destiny 6s and +2 to move, you could suddenly give Zangor like 26-inch charge range, which is fucking great, but it requires all this setup. Whereas, so it feels like a real choice. And then you realize, well, hang on, do I need command points as a Tzeentch player? Because I basically have no command abilities. No one has a fucking command ability in Tzeentch. No one gives a shit. Yeah. They have spells. And I have Destiny dice, which step in for the same sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I can just set my run rolls with that instead if I need to. So it becomes a question of efficiency and like where you put your priorities, which is exactly how it should be. It shouldn't be just like, well, this is optimal, so I'll do this. Yeah. Which is really good. How are you feeling about the Stormcast changes?
It's pretty interesting. Like a bunch of stuff has gotten cheaper and a couple of things have gotten more expensive. So, this is if the leaks are correct, which it really looks like they are.
Yeah, I think.
So for example, the Heraldor, everyone's favorite, he's 20 points cheaper. Like he's down to 100 points, which is crazy because he's great.
I think, and I hate saying this, I think that Heraldor might be the best Stormcast shooting unit now.
It could well be for the 100 points.
Because think about it. Not affected by Lookout Sir in any way. Because look out, sir, that man is about to honk a big horn at the hill we're standing
Can't
on.
warn someone about that.
Exactly, it just happens.
Just happens.
They can run and shoot because it's not a shooting attack. It's just something they do in the shooting phase.
I'd need to check that. I'm not sure. I think it's a shooting attack, so I'm not sure.
Really? Okay, I always thought it was just like in the shooting phase, honk.
No, but it's 15-inch range, and there's no hit roll. There's no two roll. It just happens.
Yeah,
you just roll
exactly.
the range of the thing, and scenery is massive normally anyway.
Yeah.
So it creates a huge bubble of mortal wounds, basically.
So think about it. Like, would you take 2 units adjudicators, or would you take 3 heralders?
I mean, it's a toss up at that point. Like, it is pretty close.
I think at hero sniping, the heralders would be better.
Yeah. It depends on the table.
True, yeah.
And stuff like that.
I'm gonna burn all my terrain.
Yeah. He's amazing. There's one thing I've not been doing with him, which is like, he lets you retreat and charge. So what I should have been doing all this time was with Fulminators every single turn, using the Inspiring Horn to get them to retreat and charge. They're always damage 3 in combat.
Right, yeah.
So they still do that as far as I know, and I don't think their war scrolls changed. So 100 points for like, I'm going to buy more because it's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good. I need at least 2.
Oh god, it's just the honk.
Yeah, it's just the giant, welcome to the big brass band. The Stormcast coming down from the sky.
Yeah, exactly.
To ruin your buildings.
God. I remember when we did the narrative, when the Management of the Community did the narrative mini campaign when Role Models roll out when they went to Warhammer World.
Yeah.
And, they asked for a bit of story from us. So we gave them the quest they're on basically is to recover magical instruments, but implicitly musical instruments from this shattered city that my Sorcerer Lord was from, the instruments of Zakra. And they got the joke straight away that that's literally musical instruments. And I remember our friend Tom Hatfield, adding, begun, the Doot Wars have, which, was both very funny at the time and is increasingly coming to pass.
Absolutely. That's a great points change for me. And I don't know why he's cheaper. Seemed great, 120 points, but yeah, we'll see. I'm really happy that, the Paladors, have come down by 20 points. They're 200 points now.
Right.
The Aquilers come down. He's 200 points as well. So you can have like a 400 point block that's kind of interesting. And I can see why people weren't running them because they're a strange unit, but, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they actually do when I play with them. But they're hypermobile, really interesting unit. What else has changed? So I believe the Celestant Prime has come down a little bit, but the leaks have revealed a bunch of new Stormcast heroes, including, like the Lord of Hammerhall or something, who may well be the dude riding the enormous sort of griffin that you see in the AOS 2 trailer. So there's lots of art in that trailer that basically reveals future models.
Yeah.
And one of them is a Stormcast riding an enormous winged kind of creature that looks absolutely awesome. So I reckon that will be him. Something called the Lord Exorcist, which is 100 points, and I can't wait to see what the hell that is.
Yeah.
So you're seeing like these future waves of Sacrosanct Chamber that are just about to come through. The new Sacrosanct are interesting because they're actually much more synergistic than Stormcast tend to be.
Yeah.
So the Sequitors, who are the basic unit, their battle line, kind of brilliant. Like you get 5 for 120 points as compared to like 5 Liberators for 100, I believe. And they are better than Liberators, and more importantly, they're kind of potential. They have much greater potential than Liberators because the general of the Sacrosanct army and a lot of their kind of minor units can buff them. And so the Evocators have like an ability to get them to, I believe, reroll wounds or hits.
Yeah.
So if all the buffs go on them, they're rerolling wounds, hits, and saves. And a block of like 20 of those isn't that expensive. And I could see like them being the new kind of default Stormcast battle line, especially because when you can take different Stormcast heroes from different chambers and then use command abilities to let them do their special thing while the Sacrosanct kind of serve as the big core force. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how the kind of makeup of Stormcast army changes, because there isn't much synergy between chambers. So the Vanguard heroes affect Vanguard units. Sacrosanct heroes affect Sacrosanct units and Liberators randomly. And the Extremist chamber is kind of a thing onto itself. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of blend those different things. It's almost like 3 different armies, like, and how much of each army do you want in your force? And how much how much synergy do you want? And when do you want to sacrifice that for just having more Fulminators, basically? So it's an interesting choices for Stormcast. It's interesting that the new spells, the endless spells, are good, but they don't generally, they're not amazing for Stormcast really.
Yeah.
However, it looks like Stormcast are getting their own endless spells. 3 of them are listed in the leaked General's Handbook points listing. And that will be very interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, one of them's called something like the Infinitely Burning Comet.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty great. So it's interesting time for Stormcast. The great thing is you get so many new models if you're a Stormcast collector, and it's constantly coming out with awesome hero models that I can paint forever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's good. The treadmill is long.
There's an interesting, the War Scrolls for Stormcast, or the points for Stormcast, reveal that, so we've seen multiple horses that we haven't seen before.
Yes.
There's the flying horse. There's the horse that looks a bit like a space cat.
Yeah.
And so on.
Yes. I can't remember what they're all called now. Dracolith or something?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff. And what the War Scroll reveals is like, or the points reveal or appear to reveal, is that all of those mounts, all of those horses, are available to all of the different types of heroes.
Yes.
So there's, like the Lord Arcanum, who's the new sort of Sacrosanct leader, is, on, out of the core set is on a Griff Charger, which is the horse that Vanguard ride, the chicken horse.
The chicken horse.
But there are rules for that character on Dracoth, for example. And I wonder if there's going to be like a relatively generic kit, or like a sprue with like the mounted versions of different heroes on it that can then be swapped in and out of different beasts.
Yeah.
So that'd be a really nice extension of the mount rules as they currently exist.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. It also reminds me of more like an old fantasy Warhammer, when that was pretty standard for heroes to come on different beasts depending on how you wanted to point them, which is another, like, the idea that a Lord Arcanum could be as many points as you want it to be depending on the mount. And you can make a punchy one, or just have one on foot perhaps. That's a classic old school piece of Warhammer and it's building.
I think it's a really potentially fun hobby thing as well. Like, I've sort of did half of this with my Manticore, but like, I think as a Stormcast player, it would make loads of sense to have all of the different mounts with legs and magnetized waists.
Yeah.
So you just plonk different torsos on them to have the different heroes. And that again is an interesting use for what we're talking about, that final 80 points of your list. Cause the list difference in the mounts isn't going to be massive in a lot of cases, but it's like, oh, I've got 60 points left. I'll just upgrade my horse.
Yeah. Even bigger horse. That's kind of what I've done with the Star Drake. So the Lord Celestin isn't glued, and I've got the Paladin version built, and you just swap out the top half of the model and it looks fine.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be the scope for doing that with the new heroes. And it suggests there's about 6 weeks of Stormcast reveals to come after this new box is out.
I wonder how that's going to work. I imagine we might even find out pretty soon.
Yeah.
Because they're bringing out some like easy build stuff to go with day one, but there's obviously loads to come. There's obviously a new Stormcast Battle Tome to come. There's some Nighthaunt to come as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if a little bit like Primaris Space Marines after 40k 8th edition, we see like a kind of summer of Stormcast and Ghosts.
Yeah. Then who knows what?
Dark Oath. No, I think it'll be something else. I think it'll be Slanesh or Greenskins.
That'd be nice to see Greenskins get
I think there's been a lot of sort of Destruction players feeling left out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I suspect they'll get something. Let's talk about what we've been up to this month. Tom, what have you been up to?
I've been painting some Vanguard Paladors and Lord Aquila, and finally finishing off the very last dregs of my chain pile. And it's done. My Stormcast are done.
How does that feel? I want to live as you for a moment. How does that feel?
It feels like a great weight has been taken off my shoulders, and everything is finished now and happy, but also there's a burning urge to buy and paint more things. But now it feels like I have choice. Like I could pivot. I could paint anything. I could, the whole range is just sort of like laid out before me, and I could pick and choose anything I want. But it's going to be more Stormcast immediately because the new box is coming out next week. I'm very, very excited about the new Stormcast actually. I've got lots of plans for how I'm going to try and how I might paint the cloaks and stuff like that on them. But yeah, this month has just been finishing off. I think I did talk about them last time.
We talked a lot about horse ass.
Yeah, so I basically applied that horse ass technique to the rest of the horses that I had.
Yeah.
And they're all done now.
I was impressed by how fast the rest of them seemed to come together.
Yeah, I felt like, cause I got a formula down for it basically and just had the colours ready to go and, just did them full production line and kind of had them mostly done over the course of like a weekend or so. And after that, it was just, there are so many little bits on those models. There's so many little, kind of different textured things. Like on the back of the horses, there's a sort of survival package that they have, which is like a rope, and it's like a bedding in a little kind of jar of some mysterious kind of drink that elixir they carry around with them. There's just so many little details on those models and they're so good. They really tell the story of what that unit is supposed to be. They're supposed to be like these wild riders who just kind of live in the realms and they're completely self-sufficient. And
their rope and bed.
And
Capri Sun.
Yeah, they have a swig of Orangina before they go to bed and pat their Griff Charger good nights, their horse good nights. So they're done now, and they're probably the best thing I've painted, I think. Up there with probably the Vanguard Hunters that I did.
Yeah.
So I think as a force, they look really cohesive and they look awesome. Really, really pleased with them. I think the main thing I learned was just like, plowing on and getting on with it and doing stuff quite quickly and not worrying too much.
Yeah.
Especially with the horse kind of fur stuff. It was just, you can spend time being daunted about it and worrying about it, but if you just like get stuck in, go through it quickly, then second on scale, green on straps. Okay, we'll do all the straps and all of these, and then we'll do all the blue robes under the horse seat, as the saddle as it's called. We'll do all the blue robes under that, then we'll do the gold, and then we'll do this, just like doing one thing at a time and just like burning through it until it suddenly like looks remarkable and almost finished. And then you can put do the eyes and do the really kind of fine details that finish it off.
How do you, it's interesting because I think if you told someone who didn't have this hobby, I feel so relieved to have finished. They would assume that the whole thing was a negative experience. I find Shame Path's really interesting as a concept. I can understand the relief. How have you avoided having a bigger shame path? That's maybe the question I'm kind of having towards.
I think, I've painted all of the Stormcrest units. Like there aren't many new things that I would want to. I own pretty much every unit that they've ever had, thanks to a couple of like Christmases basically where people have bought me loads of it.
Yeah.
And so I own every model in the range. There's only one or two I haven't done. One is a Zeros, which I've just got from you here today, Chris. So I'll probably go home and include that together. So that's a new one for the shame pile. And the other one is probably like a Lord Celestin on foot, who I probably will. It's quite a cool model, but, apart from that, I've got all of them. So it's more that novelty thing of like, I don't really want to paint another unit of Liberators. I don't really want to paint another unit of Adjudicators or kind of fill out my battle line. I'm more interested in these bespoke little projects.
Yeah, but you might, for example, do that 20 Sequitur block if the thought strikes you, right?
Yeah, for sure. But, that would, if I do 20 of them, it will be the novelty that will kind of drive me through it.
Yeah.
And, so the idea of painting another 10 Retributors, I'm just not interested in it because I've got 10 Retributors and, done that. It's almost like you've chunked those projects out.
Yeah.
I wonder if I'd struggle with a full Death Army in some ways because that requires you to paint a lot of the same thing over and over again. And though it can be very satisfying and you could get Bone looking really good really easily and Ghost looking really good quite easily as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if the sort of the batch nature of it will be negative or maybe it'll be nice.
I think it's a really interesting question. Obviously I've been doing a lot of batch painting as well. Finishing is really fun. And playing games with finished units is really fun.
Yeah.
But there's a degree of quick, which is almost too quick. It's like you'd want to do that little extra something for your skeletons to make them your skeletons rather than just some skeletons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And a lot of that comes in at like conception stage. And that's where I'm challenged by the Sequiturs to be like, okay, so what are you going to do to make these Sequiturs different? They're going to be gold because that's what your army is. But what are you going to actually do to make them your Sequiturs and not just another kind of Games Workshop box art version of them?
Yeah.
And I don't really have the time to go into big conversions with them, so it's got to be the paint job that's got to be interesting. So that's what kind of went right with the Paladors specifically. It's that choosing to go with the fur and the realistic look on them is actually quite the opposite direction to how they're often painted on like Instagram or in like they're always very brightly coloured and they look amazing. But I think choosing to go with quite a almost realistic look feels like my take on that.
Yeah, I really like it.
So I'm really pleased. They look amazing. They look so sweet. The posing on them, as I've said before, is incredible. It's one of the most complicated models to put together, I think, in the range and that I've done so far, but the results have been worth it. I'm slightly terrified now that, I was talking to Jim about this and he says that he reckons they're good in units of 6. I was like, that's 100 hours of my life to make this a unit of 6, even though it would look amazing and probably be quite good.
Yeah. You might get the urge. You never know.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed them. It's been so much fun to paint because they have like straps and fur and kind of beaks and claws and the gold and cloth as well. It's like all the things that are on those models. And, it's just really fun, like leathery scratches into the straps next to the fur, and then, doing the golds. I've always done it. And, it's just been a lot of techniques coming together, and the feeling has just been very, very satisfying. And very, very relaxing as well.
That's great.
Yeah, it's been super
I'm really
good.
looking forward to, like, I know it feels like, I imagine listening to the podcast as well, it would feel like months since we've actually sat down and put loads of models on the table, but it does feel like it, but it's nice to sort of have these fallow periods where we just sort of like rebuild up again.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to, just using new units is going to be so exciting, because we all know what retrobuters do, we all know what Abominators do, and especially for Stormcast, like, they're quite workman-like as units. Like they just sort of plodding. They do what they
a lot of 4-ups.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to be 3+, 4+ to hit, and maybe one round here and there. And they don't have any like special abilities really, or anything. Not many like trick shots. Vanguard can with their like. The Paladors can run through space. You roll 6d6 and they can go that far in a move. That's one of the kind of special powers they have. But that's unusual for Stormcast to have something that weird and interesting. At least for the Sacrosanct Chamber, we're getting magic. That's going to be
I'm really excited about that.
So that's going to shake up my army completely. Like the idea. And some of them have auto unbinds, which is going to be huge. Like the ability to auto unbind something devastating is when do you use that? When do you throw down? That shatter that. I think they shatter like, it's kind of a cool image. They sort of shatter this crystal and just blanks out the magic that's kind of congealing around the wizard they're targeting. They also, the Stormcast wizards have this weird thing where they carry like soul vials with them, and they can like sort of throw them on the floor to like blow up basically, and just do multiple wounds to everyone, including themselves.
The wizard grenade.
Yeah, so there's this idea that if they get charged, they just like shatter all their soul vials and try and kill whatever's charged them and sort of go down with them, which is kind of a strange and dark thing for Stormcast, because they always know they're coming back, but it's quite dark that some of them would intentionally suicide in that way in the middle of battle.
Yeah, it's neat. Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's kind of a nice little dark element that hasn't been explored before. And from a lore perspective, I'm really excited about Stormcast as well, because the Sacrosanct Chamber is supposed to be the ones guarding the whole reforging process.
Yeah.
And they're tasked with fixing the reforging process and finding out how Stormcast could be reforged without them losing their minds gradually. But they're busy fighting the mortal realm, so there's lots of scope for wrong Stormcast in the future as well, which is rad.
Yeah. Lightning Geists.
Yeah, that's got to be a thing, right? At some point.
Yeah, totally.
I can imagine like Stormcast units that are unstable and kind of turning into lightning geists if they get killed, and maybe.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
So there's loads of potential for where the Stormcast can go in the future based on that. But yeah, it's rad. I'm really excited. How about you? What have you been playing?
So I've had a sort of a weird month in a way, cause I haven't finished anything. So I decided to, in terms of what I've been painting, I put a lot of time into my Zangor, which I feel like, I've shown you like once a month, every month for the last couple of months, and there probably hasn't been like much visible change, but that represents hundreds of hours at this point. Like I've easily spent 300 hours on that unit since the beginning of the year.
Wow.
From building to green stuff to converting to every single stage. And there was a point, I think I talked about this last month, where I thought I was going to try and speed them through to the finish line, for the London GT, and didn't do that. And then there was a point where I realized that, like, actually I'm kind of enjoying the process. Like, I have a satisfaction with them, which is that, like, nothing I ever do voluntarily is going to be this grueling. After this, there is no army in the Games Workshop part of the hobby that is going to ask me to paint 30 models of this level of detail.
No, that's true.
In a single go.
Yeah, I can't.
No one made me do this. I should stress.
Yeah.
But like, short of, I'm going to paint 30 Harlequins. Even then, Harlequins are easier than the Zangor.
Right.
Harlequins have less materials to work. I painted Harlequins. Like, I remember doing it. Like, you could, Harlequins have more freedom to go nuts and go less nuts. But there are middle grounds that I think are genuinely easier than Zangor, because I think Zangor, because the issue with Zangor is because the level of detail is so high, but it's also sculpted detail. Like, Harlequin detail is like freehand checks and stuff like that, which means if you just paint them with colorful leggings, you're fine. Whereas, Zangor, just, and I've talked about this so much, so I won't go about it, but they're bedecked in just stuff. And there are, it's not infinite stuff, but it is a lot of stuff. Like, gemstones, claws, eyes, teeth, beaks, tentacles, feathers, skulls, pouches, ornate weapons with gems, ornate weapons with demonic eyes.
Stuff they've picked up off the ground. Just the account.
Some of them have hooves, some of them have claws, some of them, you know what I mean? Like, some of them have, their necks breaking out into tentacles. Some of them have their necks breaking out into feathers. Some of them have spines. They all have horns. Some of those horns have caps. Some of them don't have caps. Some of them have horns that split in this way or that way. Like, there's just so much going on. And at a certain point in complexity, that becomes obviously daunting, but point beyond that, it's very zen, I think, to just sort of like, this is like the hottest bath I can get in. And learning to tolerate that has been real. Everything, the way I'm describing this makes it sound awful. But actually, so like, I did all the gold trim. Probably been joking about it for years. I've done all the gold trim. I've base coated all the gold, in 2 coats. I have, well, what I haven't done is highlight it yet, but like, and each part, and then, yeah, this is probably the perfect example. Base coating all of the gold trim took me a week. Cause there's a shitload of it. It's just, there's more than your eye knows when you look at it. You're like, yeah, it's got gold trim, but you don't think about the actual movement of a human hand.
To go over all
meters of it, you know?
Yeah.
And then obviously there's second coats on the larger areas. So my tip of the week may have even been a tip of the month a while ago is that like, gold is so much faster over a silver base coat. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Because it means that what would be particularly on detailed bits, so like the edges of jewels or things like that, gem insets, or filigreed areas, that kind of thing. You can get away with 1 coat of Retributor armor over silver or over a silver base coat in a way that you can't over a grey base coat because it'll look good, dull. Like, whereas like worst case scenario, if you're doing it quickly, you end up with what looks like a kind of yellowy glaze over silver. That's fine in a block of 30. So that's sped things up, but still on the larger areas, on weapons, on horns and things like that, you obviously want to go over again and do it again. So there's all of that. And then I could have done like the thing where you're just like, well, okay, that's, you know, that's that time to just cover all the gold bits in Seraphim Sepia, which is the one I tend to use for my Tzeentch because it's less red. There's not a lot of red in my Tzeentch. But I was like, you know what? Actually, I've gone this far. Why don't I do 3 washes on every bit of gold? So I have. So like, so they're all, so it's more obvious on some parts of them than others, but I've done far more with the gold on these than I did on my Lord of Change. Like the golds now does have some Requiem Flesh Shade and even some Carabert Crimson in like the very deepest recesses just to make it feel warmer and deeper and trying to learn some of those things I learned about contrast looking at the best army nominations at London GT. Like, fuck it. Like there is I've said it already on this podcast, but there's an in for a penny, in for a pound thing with a batch job this big, which is like, well, if I do 30 hero standard models based on my capabilities, then I'll never regret having done that. Yeah. You know what I mean? It'll still be like, you know, a centerpiece thing. Yeah. And they're getting towards done now. Like there's, at the moment I am midway through, doing a, Drakenhof Nightshade wash over all of their many straps. Okay. After that I've got tongues to do. Yeah. This is an advantage you have for Stormcast. None of the Stormcast are opening their mouths and going, eh. No. The birds do a little bit, but otherwise, no. Yeah. This is what, you know, the subtle weaknesses of Chaos, I think. As from a painting point of view. Things you don't realize. Most Order armies are kind of like their jaws are set firm against the, you know, the encroaching forces of darkness. Most Chaos armies are going, bah! And that's the difference between them. It's basically Grand Alliance, and Grand Alliance, eh.
Yeah, you've got to paint those teeth, you've got to paint all of the...
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of teeth and tongue and tonsils. Pink Horrors have tonsils, paintable tonsils.
Yeah, like, have you ever
tonsils? Yeah, exactly. You know, you got to think about this. Tonsil count. Yeah. Any unit. So yeah, then there's that. Then I'm going to do loads more stuff with the skin and the feather stubs, because there's different kinds of feathers. There are feathers that are half formed, and tentacles, and it's going to take me probably I'll hopefully be done by mid-month. That's my hope. That's been a bit of a sort of thing, but actually in a month with a much more limited hobby time, it's actually been quite nice to just be like, just doing this. Just doing this. I sit down there, they are all 30 of them on my painting desk. Hi kids. Who wants an infinitesimally small change to take place? It's like I'm trying to carve a statue with my tongue. Talking about tongues.
Man, that's quite a job. I kind of know what you mean. It's just, maybe it helps knowing that you'll never do this again. Maybe that's it. Like if you knew you had to do another block of 30 down the line.
When they went up by 30 points, I was like, Oh, thank God. Like, cause
you'd have to match it, right? If you did a new unit, you'd have to get up to that same standard all over again. That's the worst thing if you don't do that.
Yeah, I know. I think, like, also, I don't have to do anything. That's true.
Yeah.
I am not in Warhammer prison. Like, the thing is, like, I would never, even if it was like, okay, here's the new Tzeentch power list, it's 3 blocks of 30 Zangor, I'd go like, I'm not doing it. Sorry. That's fine, you know, but I'm glad I've got this. The other thing is that, like, I'm glad I went to 30 because I originally was going to do 20, and I am glad I went to 30 because it is optimal. Like, the change to them was how much their kind of, what's it called? The horde bonus. Like when something's cheaper if you take it in its maximum number.
Yeah.
It got a little bit more expensive, but it's still cheaper to take 30 than it is to take 3 groups of 10. And because they get better the more there are, it just feels like the right number of Zangor. So, like, you know, that block of 480 points worth of Zangor feels like almost like a new centerpiece unit in a way. It's not just battle line. The fact that it has the battle line tag is misleading. It's like, this is like
big deal. That's a lot of points, 480 points.
It's 480 points, yeah. But it is like, 60 wounds behind a 4-up save. Very, very good in combat.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
So that's been fun. So I did that. And then I had a bit of a sort of, another reckoning with my shame pile, and started the process of selling off stuff that I actually, like, I found it quite therapeutic. Like, it can seem like, I see sometimes because I've joined more groups where people sell on Warhammer secondhand and things.
Yeah.
You realize how many unfinished projects there are in the world, but also how many armies get sold off after the meta changes and that kind of thing. Yeah. And that's not really where I'm at with it. It's not a bitter thing. It's like, I think a lot about this. Like, buying stuff is nice. Planning armies is nice. Daydreaming about armies you might build is nice. It's window shopping. It's window shopping for tiny plastic people. And, window shopping is fine, but there are ways of engaging with the hobby, particularly when you're stressed out, that can be, I think, not unhealthy, but can lead you down a kind of, you know what I mean? Like, like, not to go into grisly details, but I had a pretty, like, a bit of a shit time a couple of months ago. And during that time, I basically, like, mapped out a whole bunch of 40k armies I wanted to do. And some of them I still might. And I even bought stuff for some of them and sort of like started some projects and things. But it was like a sort of the moment, this will make me feel better kind of, you know, I just want to buy some things, you know what I mean? You know, that impulse. And that's something that, you know, I see this whenever I'm hanging out in Games Workshop in town, that sort of occasional impulse to just like, time to buy another start collecting box, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's an aspect of this hobby. And I think sometimes a negative one or even a damaging thing where people spend more than they can and that kind of thing. And I wouldn't say I'd done that, but I realized that my shame pile, which I do definitely have, was like something I could happily ignore a lot of the time, but it was always like, fuck, I actually want to be getting more value out of this. So I started selling off more stuff and being more brutal about what I was actually going to keep and what I was really ultimately going to value. So like that meant going through things and going like, I have this, you know, it's right there. Like I have this sprue for a Knight Venator, the flying arrow man, or the Knight Azeroth, the flying lantern man.
Yeah.
When am I going to use this? I have this sort of like Stormcast army in the back of my head forever. When is it actually going to happen, Chris? Like when you want to do Ideneth, you've got still got Tzeentch to finish. Second edition's coming out. At what point? Yeah. Is it in 2020? If so, what good is this sprue? When that sprue could turn into a little bit of money that turns into some more AOS 2 stuff, or, you know, whatever, right?
Yeah, sure.
So I did that. I'm going to sell off. I've been trying to, but I haven't yet shifted like Primaris. Same thing.
Yeah.
You know, at which point, I have no models left from the Dark Imperium box that I picked up last year, which may have mean that was a mistake. However, between sort of selling that stuff off, I actually ended up getting the 40k book a little bit cheaper than it would have cost to buy it by itself.
True.
So
that's a lovely book.
Yeah, it's a lovely book. So, and I definitely want the book. I'm still interested in 40k, but just taking that eye to it has really helped kind of like focus on what I actually want to do.
Yeah.
And then obviously the thing is not overinvest in different things in the first place. That is solution one. But nonetheless, like I think that's been quite healthy. But then it's like I haven't finished sort of working on them yet, but there's so you know our the terrain board I built, like the secret weapon miniatures tablescapes thing. That's a really great kit, right?
It's awesome.
I only found out recently why they're so hard to find.
Right.
And it's because of, I think, a legal dispute between and I don't know exactly the things, between the people who make them and the factory in China where they're made.
Right.
Like they can't get access to the mill anymore or something like that. So they basically don't exist anymore. And there was only one more thing I wanted to add to it. And so, and then suddenly it was on eBay and it was brand new and I'd never seen one on eBay before. So I ended up putting a bit of money down. So that's going to be another project for me, to expand the terrain board I've got with another set of tiles, which would mean we could do an 8 by 5 board if we ever want to, but realistically it just means we have more freedom to swap
Like
parts of the board in and out.
Yeah.
But the expansion I've got for it is a sort of Lost City temple set.
Nice.
Which is going to be really nice, I think, and give us a bit of
cool.
variety.
Yeah,
so I'm going to paint some of that stuff up, but also I want to experiment with some things. I want to experiment with oil washes to do stonework, like kind of brushed marble stonework.
Yeah,
and
nice.
actually, like, for the next narrative campaign, like, we always talked about kind of pressing into these sort of ancient ruins and things, but we can only re-represent that just with terrain pieces.
Yeah.
Whereas I want to actually materially do the terrain. So
that'd be sweet.
that's new project one. So that is a new concession to the shame pile. I had finished my terrain board, but you know, the other thing was, this is a whim, a bit of a non sequitur, if you will. But, my local GW, I think most GWs are doing something to celebrate, AOS 2, and the Bath GW is doing a painting competition, and they're giving away, the, easy build sequiturs, so the new Stormcast models. So I took one and, I've been painting that over the course of a week, to enter the painting competition. Thing one, those easy build models, which are sort of the push fit expansion things, those models are fucking great.
They're insane.
I can understand why people thought they were Shadespire models.
Yes.
Because they are, like, they're so good. The one I took, which is the one I think most people would take, is the Sequitur Prime, who is, obviously there'll be pictures around, but, and hopefully she'll be finished by the time, I put the show notes for this episode. But, she's sort of, like, a she and a really good she, for Age of Sigmar. Really powerful looking. Reminds me of the Crusader from Diablo 3.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But it's not like, she's standing with her hammer back over her shoulder, leaning on her shield. And I realized something that I love at rest hero poses. I think there's not a lot of, like, they're not represented enough particularly in AOS. Like, but things like the Dark Oath Chieftain is like a perfect example of this, where like almost standing still and planting your feet and sort of like being kind of at ease is almost as much of a power play as leaping off a rock or something like that.
Yeah, it's almost like it makes everyone around you look more extra because everyone else is freaking out and doing the kind of, or the normal battle line units are doing their kind of mad kind of attack panic poses.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's this kind of calm in the storm, this kind of, and that's the type of heroism, isn't it? That's the type of awesome battle.
Yeah, I really like it. The other example that I can think of is Morathi, on foot Morathi, where she's just pointing the spear.
Yeah, commanding someone to go and kill someone.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I think
that's right.
I'm always very happy to see sort of, yeah, you're right, non-extra moments in characters. So it's a lovely model. And actually, particularly even for just a battle line unit, there's so much going on with them. Like, she's on the table that we're looking at right now, so Tom can have a look.
Yeah.
Like from things that are familiar to Liberators, like her armor is like fundamentally a Liberator armor underneath the tabard and the sort of leather skirt, which is a really nice kind of way of putting wizard imagery. But the thing that really struck me, is it was a little bit weird with the Sequiturs or with the Sanctuary Chamber generally, that they're both wizards and siege masters. Like they make catapults and staves. But actually those models really bring the two together because like she looks like a kind of blacksmith who's also a wizard. Yeah. Like her apron, her tabard and kind of wizard robe could also be like a blacksmith's apron. And like she's covered in like these sort of anvil charms and things. And it's that I think is a good example of why AOS is cool to me. Cause it's like, this is two different fantasy tropes, like the kind of blacksmith turned warrior and the sort of arcane knight, but kind of mashed together in a way that I haven't seen before. So one lovely model, that was the first thing. But also I thought, well, I want to kind of go in a bit on this and do something. And I find after batch painting, even after batch painting a lot and enjoying it, it's nice to see if I can push myself a bit. So I decided to take this as an opportunity to try and learn how to do non-metallic metals. And here's bad news for me finishing things ever. I found out I really love doing non-metallic metals.
Oh, sweet.
So, she's on the desk right now, but like I've only finished the weapon at the time we're talking about this, but I'm sort of prepping for the rest of it. And this took a little bit of reading, and sort of looking at different ways of doing it. But, fundamentally painting non-metallic metals, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend for like an army, although it looks good, is really gratifying for a few reasons. One is it's basically blends and gradients and understanding like them, which is something that I already liked doing, but previously I would always do it in places where like in a very Zinchi way. So fire that goes from one color to another, or a robe that shifts color down its length. Not basically doing it for the effect of a color changing, not doing it to try and mimic the effect of light on a surface, if that makes sense. But the thing I found really helpful, and I think will translate into my painting generally, is it forces you to think about the angle of light. And the best way to think about that is to think about 4 lights sort of equidistant at points of a square around your character's head. And those kind of encourage you to think about how light might shift and things, and to look at lots of pictures of metal. And actually it gets a little bit into the territory of quote unquote real illustration. Not fully, but you're creating an effect on a blank surface sometimes. Yeah. Like, and I understand like the skill cap for this is enormously high, and I feel like I'm at the bottom of it. And I feel like, you know, I'm able to do sort of quite brushworky stuff. And I'm happy that she might end up looking like a piece of concept art rather than a piece of a photo. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. But like, I found it really, really gratifying. Just that sort of, the attention it forces you to pay to the details of individual surfaces and things, which is something that you wouldn't necessarily dwell on if you're just painting it, lead belcher, washing it, highlighting it. You don't think about how would light actually fall on this hammer? Is this shaped like an anvil? That kind of thing. So you can probably see it on the flat of the hammer most clearly, like the sort of how sort of splitting up like a gemstone kind of helps like that. And then because you're painting just with ordinary paints, so like my recipe for gold is like, because I wanted quite an orangey gold, is like scrag brown, tau light ochre, doomball brown, and screaming skull bone. And there's something kind of fun and alchemical about taking just brown and turning it into something that looks like
shiny,
gold.
Yeah, for sure.
Winks are very important. Winks of pure white are very important almost across the board. But the other thing that I found it let me do is because I wanted to do something a bit extra, even though she's at rest. So I wanted like a weapon effect or something. And so what I've ended up going for, which is a lot easier actually when you've done non-metallic metals, because it's easier to blend other kinds of paint when you're not into an effect, when you're not, and to highlight out of it when you're not sort of spoiling metal with another color, was to do like crackling lightning. Because in the game, sequitors can charge their shields or their hammers. Yeah. And so I wanted to sort of create that effect. So the sort of little details and things on the hammer are actually like exuding lightning, which I've done is yellow just to contrast with her armor, because it's rather than blue, because it's she's a celestial vindicator like the rest of my Stormcast. But like, I like the idea that she's sort of, even though she's at rest, I wanted to create this sort of story of she's sort of standing there surveying the battlefield or something, but her hammer is still kind of like ready, surging with like soul energy or something. Yeah, awesome. So I'm really pleased that that's coming along so far, and hopefully it'll be finished by the time the pod goes up, so I can put a final picture in. But yeah, just that sort of process of discovery has been really, really rewarding actually.
Yeah, I feel like the Sequitors have really nailed the paladin aesthetic, and they kind of call back to the old Empire in some interesting ways.
They do actually, yeah.
They really remind me of the old Sigmarite wizards and those awesome models, and they've just kind of blended into this new design, and the results are so cool. Yes, can't wait to paint those. I'm going to paint so many. I was kind of torn between. So Chip's getting the main box as well, and we were talking about like maybe we should swap halves of the set, so I'd have like 2 lots of the set, and Chip could have 2 lots of the Night Haunt. I thought like maybe in December, when I've painted up my Stormcast and stuff, I might really love to do a Night Haunt half of the set. Yeah. But then I thought that about the Death card for my, for the Dark Imperium set, which I bought last year. And I painted up a bunch of the Primaris, and I probably will paint the rest of them. I really like those models. But those Death Guard, I'm never going to paint them, I realise now. And I wonder if I'll fall into the same trap with the AOS set.
I think, so I would definitely recommend going into the store and things and looking at the models. Obviously you'll get the models. Yeah. But because the Stormcast are monopose, I suspect, and so the Night Haunt, and they're lovely, but they've obviously gone this extra effort to make them I feel like you might end up having more stuff. You don't, like, things like the Ballista be fine, and the Sequitors probably be fine, but like the Lord Arcanum, you just got a bonus. Yeah, that's Lord Arcanum you're probably not going to use, and not as easy to convert as other things. I think, and also those ghosts are going to be really fun to paint.
They are.
So I think if it was me, I'd probably keep them, maybe keep them on the sprue for now, or do a test model or 2, and then like down the road, if you end up not wanting them, selling them on and using that, putting that money towards like,
Stormcast hero.
Yeah, or a box, or a couple of boxes of things you actually do want.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
I feel like doubling the contents of the core box isn't actually that useful in army, if that makes sense. Because you're weighted towards things like the siege weapon and the special units and the heroes, which aren't
necessarily what you're going to do.
You'd probably want the multi-pose version of, for example, the Knight Encounter on foot.
Yeah.
More than you'd want another one in exactly the same pose.
So I love that pose, and I love, again, it calls back to like the old Sigmar wizards, like the kind of wide outstretched arms and the kind of, that looks like she's possessed.
The front of the Titanic casting spell.
yeah. Which is, I think that's great. But if you've got two of those, it looks a bit stagey, doesn't it? If they're in exactly the same pose. And they're definitely going to release kind of maybe even posable versions of
Yeah, they showed mounted versions of them as well.
Yeah, that's true.
I think you'd probably want that ultimately more than you'd want.
Yeah, just a load of the same stuff. Plus, like, I've got some ideas for Night Haunts and I'd like to approach them completely differently to because they're traditionally supposed to be like, white and wispy, and I quite like the idea of actually like making their skulls and limbs like black and almost glossy and kind of as though they've crawled out of the earth kind of thing. Then actually having them, having their cloaks be like white, washed in Rakoth flesh to be like a kind of dirty cloth. And there's lots of interesting ways you could do them that might be really different. And there's kind of no pressure for, like, if it's just the second half of a starter box and you might never go on to collect the army, there's like no pressure to mess them up too much. You can be quite adventurous.
And the other thing is that like you get, you're basically like an extra model away or an extra box away from 1,000-point army.
Yeah, that's true.
At which point you just got that.
Yeah,
if you had to go to a doubles event or a
that's really true.
small tournament.
Yeah, that's really true.
I think you'd, I would recommend keeping them, honestly.
I think I will, actually. And that's what's going to, I was thinking about that, but I've been going back and forth on it. And also just the shapes and silhouettes are just so different to Stormcast, and I think I'd really relish it would feel exotic and novel to paint such different, like a bunch of wibbly dudes instead of a bunch of, staunch, blocky dudes.
Yeah. Blocky or wibbly.
And blocky or wibbly, that's the starter set. Blocky versus wibbly.
Indeed.
That's AOS 2.0.
Let's do some questions, Tom.
Lovely.
Let's do some of the questions from the people who sent the questions.
That's the listeners. Thank you very much for your questions.
Thanks. We don't have to do the whole bit in this podcast. I keep forgetting.
Yeah, that's
doing the bit from the other podcast. First up, Simon writes, Dear purveyors of painted pugilists, it is the year 40,000, and the only life hobbyists know is war. No one knows how the fight between order and chaos started, but search hard enough and you'll find fragments. The Discord started it all. Someone drew a bant not received, a misunderstood emoji for Pete's sake. Now there's an endless war between two sides. Once you pick a side, there is no turning back. Unpainted models will fall to pieces or snap into place once you pledge your hobby life to order or chaos. You must choose. A life only painting by sub-assembly or after assembly?
This is the great rift.
It is.
In the model painting community.
It is. And then he adds a PS to explain the joke. I don't think it needs explaining, but we'll go with it. On the Discord channel, there's a good-natured discussion between people's preferences when it comes to sub-assemblies. Pete Fienia from Discord is firmly assemble first, while Drew is firmly sub-assembly. This question imagines the CNC Discord isn't full of positive, tolerant, enthusiastic people and the inevitable world cataclysm that would follow. Also, I have no idea if sub-assembly counts as ordered or chaotic. That's an interesting question in itself. Keep casting these pods, Curly and or Simon. I am going to pipe my flag immediately and firmly in the camp marked sub-assemblies.
Yeah. See, I would say that's the order camp.
I think it is as well.
Yes. Because that's planning ahead, and that's making sure that when the final thing comes together, it is as proper as it could possibly be. Whereas the gluing it all together and then sort of hoping for the best and
the grey, plasticky undersides of the Chaos Men.
Exactly. Below what appears to be like a shimmering and beautiful exterior, there's rot and corruption and indeed just clear grey plastic that has barely been primed.
Yeah.
That's the Chaos way.
And trying to paint that right is some sort of strange process of trying to shove a bendy brush up between Chaos Man's legs.
Yeah, that is the most awkward thing you can do with the model, really. When you just got to snake that tiny brush in, and it's got to go right up the skirt and get the bit so there's parts of my Paladors that shamefully aren't painted, but you do need to get the microscope out and kind of get some mirrors to actually see where they are.
I think it's definitely Chaos because there's an element of like, you understand if you go that way that you get away with it, that no one really cares, that like that life is an illusion.
Yeah, that's right.
That all your painting is men that have to look good from a tabletop and a certain distance and certain angle, and anything else is a kind of folly of control.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, I've painted some things in sub-assemblies, and some things just do need to be painted in sub-assemblies, particularly like the Celestant Prime. If you want to do...
You're sort of in the middle of this, aren't you?
Yeah, I swing one way or the other.
Craft World Eldar of painting.
Yeah, I'm torn between Chaos and Order for sure. Probably, like, I'm kind of, I'm not that interested at all in collecting a Chaos army, but maybe I just want to be Chaos about the way I approach modelling other stuff.
So these push fit Sequitors, the one I've got on the table right now, obviously she doesn't have a hand or shield, which implies a sub-assembly. She's not even glued together.
Just purely.
She's pushed together at the moment because I want the freedom to take her back apart at any time, should I need to. So that's sub-assemblies all the way down. Like, if I can mount every individual atom of a model on a piece of metal and stick it into a piece of cork and spray it separately, I will. Nice. You should see my fucking Lord of Chaos. He's in 6 pieces, I think. Okay. And he's a single man.
Interesting. I've kind of struggled with it a little bit in the past. So with the Paladors, it's very complicated to put together.
Yeah.
And at one point, so that you put the riders on, you do the mounts and the riders separately. Seems like the only way to do it. But then one of them, like, you just need to glue the leg on last. So you can, the riders are actually super glued to the mounts because, you've painted everything. And then there's this one stray, like, lower leg that you've got to glue on, and it's just grey. And then you've got to do the whole gold process. And there's always that panic of, like, will it look consistent? Will it look as though it's part of the rest of the model if it's separately? And then you've got to put all of your faith in the formula and just do exactly the same formula as everything else and hope for the best. And I feel like that's a slightly panicky thing that I get from sub-assemblies where I can paint everything separately, but there might be inconsistency of it when it eventually comes together.
That's true. I think one thing I found, one of the reasons I've pushed this Sequitur together is because doing non-metallic metals, the light has to be coming from the same direction on every part, or else it'll look a bit wrong.
Yeah, so you can't envision that.
So I've base coated in sub-assemblies and then pushed together to actually do the non-metallic metals.
Yeah.
Because I want to be sure that, so it means you have to plan quite smartly. I'm still glad I did sub-assemblies because, like, insides of shields and things, but yeah. I appreciate that Fee gets a lot more done than I do, I think. So there's probably an argument to be made for not worrying this much.
I think there's a difference between hero units and battle lines as well a lot of the time.
Yeah, true.
Where if you just see a mass of models on the tabletop, you're not really going to be looking at their skirts and then...
No, that's true. But also you can save yourself a lot of grief with sub-assemblies. The example I give is any 40k model that's holding their gun across their chest.
Oh, yeah.
You will be glad you painted the gun separately.
Yeah.
Because it'll be quicker. Like it's flat out quicker than trying to reach the brush around.
Yeah.
Unless your Space Marines are black. Or unless your Space Marines are the same colour as the base coat spray. So grey or black or white.
Yeah.
You are going to be trying to get a colour on the back side of the gun and the front side of their chest.
That's a nightmare.
That's
a nightmare.
And that's where they put the Aquila on both sides.
That's true.
But yeah, so I guess I'm definitely camp sub-assembly. You are...
variable, mostly I'll glue and model together.
Yeah.
Unless it's absolutely necessary.
The Dark Angels of... Yeah. That's
the fallen.
Exactly. The cipher of...
Yeah, who knows what I'll do.
Or even who I am. Just a cool man with 2 guns. That's the role you have to play in sub-assembly. Anyway. Our next question comes from Jason, who writes, "Hello, Chris and Tom. I recently found my way back into the hobby by way of Shadespire with its combination of low price point, short playtime, and relatively simple mechanics. Since then, my interest has expanded to 40k, with a friend and I splitting the Forgebane box. I've been having a great time assembling and painting the models, but I'm finding myself intimidated at the prospect of diving fully into the hobby with the purchase of codices, rulebooks, terrain, etc. My question is this: how do you reconcile the desire to assemble and paint a specific model with the worry that you may not want to actually play the game system or faction associated with it? Thanks for the wonderful pod. I look forward to it every month. Cheers, Jason, aka Furious Cabbage on Discord."
It's nice to give yourself one-off projects and just...
It is.
Enjoy painting the thing for its own value, really.
Yeah.
And, if you're interested enough to be painting it, then it's fine never to play with it. If it looks on your shelf or you get out of the cupboard and look at it every now and then, or you learn some techniques that you take into your other models, that's the value of the model.
Yeah,
You've got to know that. And I never feel like I've wasted a model if I never end up playing with it. I get excited, excited to use my Paladors and stuff, but if it ends up, they just sit on my shelf and I look at them and think, oh, they're cool.
Yeah.
That's it for me. That's enough.
I agree. I think, painting competitions are a good way of justifying this sometimes for me, like sort of true. I thought about using bits of my shame pile for that until I realized I just wanted less shame pile and more gribble men. But also I think, you're right. One, model can be its own reward. I paint far more than I play, so enjoying what I'm painting is more important than playing. I also think that there are aspects, one of the things that I quite like about, some of the new rules. It's not universally true, but obviously the downside to some of the new summoning stuff, for example, is, you might feel like you have to pick up Chaos Spawn or whatever, or Demon Prince. But on the other hand, there are new ways to find places for those sorts of models in your army that you might not have already had. So yeah, now it's like, actually, if you fancy doing a Demon Prince, do a Demon Prince. You don't have to really worry about, does it fit in my particular list? Because you might just get one for free sometimes.
Yeah.
Convert up some Chaos Spawn. The other thing is, like, there's a fun rule for, the Realm of Beasts. Have you seen this? Doesn't have any command abilities.
Right.
But each player is allowed to bring a monster, an extra monster, and just put it on the table. But no one controls it. It just does whatever the fuck it wants.
That's awesome.
Or both players control it.
Oh, that's sweet.
So it's like an endless spell in position. So if you ever fancy just painting a model from a different Grand Alliance or from Forge World or something, then play a couple of games in the Realm of Beasts and you found a use for it. Like, you don't have to build an army around it.
Yeah, and for smaller model count, there's various skirmishes now, like in both AOS and in 40k, there's various kind of scales that you can engage at.
Yeah.
And sort of throw your models together and not worry too much
skirmish
about
is a good point as well.
allegiances, or necessarily you don't have to stick to letter of the law as long as the models are there and they look cool.
I think in short, if you like the plastic thing, if the plastic thing would make you happy, you're probably allowed to have the plastic thing.
Indeed.
That's probably okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Hobby project.
It's good.
It's nice.
Yeah. I have not loaded the next question, so I'm going to have to stall for time momentarily while I load this next question, which is from Pete, aka Fienia. Yeah. 17 for 17. How do you feel about really, really old models? I'm a huge fan of GW's current miniatures, and I find that armies with old sculpts to be a bit off aesthetically. This is most notable in armies like Craftworld Eldar, which have a large selection of very old miniatures in the current rotation. Is this just an aesthetic feeling of mine, or is it a common feeling? Love the show, Pete. /Fienia from Discord.
Definitely a clash with the very, very old models. Like, I couldn't put down the old Wood Elf Archers anymore, which I used to paint when I was, a kid. They're all exactly the same pose and they're designed to slot together in a block. Yeah. And they would not look good in AOS. No, they're just a totally different scale as much as anything. So I would have the same reservations. I
feel this way about Chaos Warriors. Because I keep wanting Saves to Darkness and I keep feeling like a Saves to Darkness revamp might be around the corner and I want to know. Yeah. And I sort of want them again because they have lots of flat panels on their armor and that sounds easy. But then I stop thinking, you know what I mean? Like, I've noticed that GW started painting them with showing models that are painted with like loads of freehand on the flat panels and things, try and spice them up a bit. But yeah, they are old and it sort of puts me off because they'd be standing very stiffly next to the world's most extra beastmen.
Yeah. I'd love a new Chaos Warrior kit with all the technology and all the skill and stuff that they could bring to bear to make them as hulking and as powerful and as scary as they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I would say though on the flip side is that I've been impressed sometimes to discover models, pretty old models in some cases, that are actually rad. Like there are sort of exceptions to the rule as well. Like it's worth remembering that a lot of the Sylvaneth range is quite old at this point. Yeah. And all that stuff looks great. Yeah. I always find that like maybe I find it more often in, I find it in AOS and in 40k, like occasionally you'll see like an old Dark Elf infantry model, like Scourge Privateers stuff, where those models still look really, really cool. There's sort of like scaled cloaks and sort of curved daggers of like the Corsairs and things like that. And then, a lot of the current, like Glade Guard sculpts and things look really good on round bases. True. Like
the Sisters of the Thorn, that's really awesome.
Yeah, and like those are all old Warhammer Fantasy Battle stuff and they look really good. I always find that with, I think Dark Eldar have a lot of Drew Carey.
Yeah, their ships the Reaver ships are super cool. They're fairly old now, I think. They still look rad.
The most pointed sense of this for me is old Space Marines versus Primaris. Just so there's a height difference in kind of feel. But yeah, like it's nice every now and then to go like, what bit's that from? And find some kind of really cool model you really didn't know existed.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think particularly as somebody who doesn't convert a lot, which I would say is something I need to do more of probably, I'm very much drawn towards the newer models.
Yeah.
If I was more of a converter, I think I wouldn't care as much.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Our next question comes from Kingsley, who writes, "Hi Chris and Tom. Since I started to get back into the hobby last year, I've definitely improved my painting technique to the point that anything painted before Christmas is now looking quite shabby in comparison to newer models. I used to prefer very soft, naturalistic highlighting, but recently I've realized that more cartoony highlighting works much better, at least for certain types of model. The acquisition of an Army Painter Psycho Detail brush has to take some of the credit, but this feels like a leap in quality brought on by improved technique. Sorry, I will learn to read. Are there any techniques that are or were specifically weak spots for you? And what do you think has been the biggest area of improvement in your painting? Cheers, Kingsley. An interesting question, I thought.
That's a good question. Just painting lines. Painting a straight line. That's hard. That's really hard. You only get better at that by doing it over and over again. And that's still something I need to get better at, but it's something that, specifically doing the fur and stuff from the Paladors has been a, great practice for just getting straight, thin lines and controlled brushes. The thing I would like to improve is just basically how to recognize the correct consistency of paint before actually attempting to do fine detail, because
rather than like
it's a bit thick and it's not coming off the brush, and just learning to get that done more consistent would be the next step for me. I'd improve a lot, but probably just straight lines.
I think for me, I've seen like incremental change in everything. Like I can't think of an area where it's like, not that I've improved a lot, but it feels like it's always been like pulling everything forward, like a sort of like average with everything, if that makes sense. Or like not everything, but you know what I mean? Like I didn't feel like there was one thing I definitely couldn't do.
Yeah, everything just gets a little bit better.
But I would say that I've gotten a lot better at understanding colour and like how different paints interact with each other, and like kind of using fewer pots of paint but getting more colours out of them with mixing and things is something I've gotten a lot more confident with. Whereas previously really cool. I was kind of doing blends and things, but mostly like, and wet blends and things, but mostly like relying on GW's progression of colours. Whereas now I feel a lot more confident going like, this needs some Oshabdi bone mixed into it or whatever. This needs to be more yellow, like the colour theory side of things. In terms of like, I think I've gotten better at using glazes and washes and knowing how they move and moving them into the right places and like caring to prevent them from pooling in stupid places, which is something that I just wasn't asked about when I started painting. And I think maybe that's something that
that's useful.
So it makes a big difference.
It does,
because you don't think it does, and then you're like, hang on, why is this just orange?
Just because it goes really glossy as well. Like it changes the sheen of the model as well if it gets too thick.
Interesting question though. Like, because basically, I mean, I realize sometimes that like I haven't moved forward that much at all in some ways. Like, my Gaunt Summoner and my Algroid are still like, look fine. And it's like, that was some of the first models I did. And it's sort of almost annoying in a way. So like,
it depends. I think like the Zangle might stand up better to photographing and things like that.
I think they will, although they have spent so long in that middle stage where enough of them isn't done and the bases aren't done that you can't see them properly yet.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That like, hopefully, the fact that I've left it so long and taken so long will be that the moment where they click will be amazing. Or it might just be like, oh, it could really go either way.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from, I don't think that's the name, so Devoted of Miniatures Monthly. Dear mods and rockers, how do you feel about non-GW models in AOS specifically? I've recently come into possession of some Mias miniatures for Counts as Chaos, Chosen of Chaos, as the current offering from Games Workshop don't really represent my idea of chaos. I know GWs are quite prohibitive officially, but I think it's nice to branch out personally. I realise this is more of a statement than a question, so yours sincerely, Devoted of
Miz has some, Miz miniatures do some really, really nice, almost Dark Souls style knights.
Yeah.
That I feel that they fill holes that the GW range doesn't do.
Dark holes.
And for that, I'd be tempted, I think, but, I just really like the GW stuff. It's quite difficult for Stormcast, so you can't really sub in stuff for Stormcast because they're very kind of clear outlines, and you can't just sub in a knight from some other faction. I
always find that subbed in Tzeentch looks wrong to me, because it just becomes a bird. It's just a bird thing.
Yeah. So maybe it depends on the army. If you're running like Beastmen or, Ever Chosen or something like that, and you see some generic Chaos Infantry, then I can imagine that'd be pretty good to reach out to other ranges.
Yeah.
But I mean, GW's plastic is really, really, really good, especially their new stuff.
Yeah, scale is a big part of it for me because scale creep is a real thing, and GW scale has crept way beyond what 28mm would be considered to be.
Yeah.
And so when it's like, it doesn't look quite right, it looks really wrong. Other factors that I find prohibitive is one, don't enjoy working with resin. I actively dislike working with metal. That limits options otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I've used third-party bits on models.
Yeah.
Basing and occasionally for conversion parts and things. Generally, though, I find that it's rare to see a third-party model that really gives me pause in terms of wanting to include it. And that's not intended to be like shade on things, but like, there's just a sort of, sometimes they're just not nice. Like, I've got some, I was given as a kind of, just because they were lying around, I think at Big once, some third-party Thousand Suns shoulder pads for 40k from before the new Rubik Marine kit came out. And the design sensibility that's gone into them is they're obviously Space Marine shoulder pad sized, and they just have Egyptian stuff on them.
Right.
Like, they're Thousand Suns by virtue of being Egyptian stuff, Anks and Anubis faces and things.
Yeah.
Whereas all of the official GW Thousand Suns stuff is really right for the Thousand Suns. Like, it's, you know, it's a specific, you know, iconography of that fiction and that setting.
Yeah.
And I understand there are rights reasons why it has to be that way, but that's one of the reasons I wouldn't go for the third party stuff, because that's like generic Egyptian Marine bit. Maybe you can make it work. I don't know. Maybe I'm being snobby, but like, for me, that, like, it's rare to see a bit that I go like, oh man. Like, I mean, I've seen like, you know, Mias Miniatures stuff and also the Kingdom Death stuff, very Dark Soulsian monster design.
Yeah.
I really love to paint some of that stuff, but I wouldn't use it in Warhammer because it looks like a part of a different game.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. No, probably not. Probably not. And the other reason for that is because, like, the places I enjoy playing the most, apart from here and, you know, local stores, the places I'd like to go to play are like Warhammer World. And even though I appreciate this is somewhat drinking the Kool-Aid, knowing that I can't do that with models that aren't official puts me in the ecosystem. And I don't want to sound like, you know, the sort of person that won't buy a piece of technology that comes out of an Apple store or something, because I would happily play other games.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's part of the hobby, right? It's part of the price of entry, for better or for worse. So, yeah.
Indeed.
Next question comes from Mr. Juice, who writes, He writes, Dear DJ Tom Seafuck and MC Fresh Cress.
I think that's a crossover from
the Crate and Crowbar. Yes, it is. To explain, that was based on the time that I started to introduce Crate and Crowbar main podcast regular Tom Francis as Tom Senior. Caught myself halfway and said the word fuck, inventing the man Tom Seafuck,
which is
who's not present. A mystery third Tom. Mr. Juice writes, imagine that GW make a MOBA where the characters are all Primarchs. What would their Primarch ability be?
Their Primarch ability?
As in, what would the Primarch's abilities be?
Oh, I see.
I can read.
A Primarch MOBA is a pretty good idea, actually.
I think it is. I think you'd have, so Lehman Russ, right? He presses, I think we should just go for ultimates.
Yeah.
And build entire kits here.
Yeah.
I think Lehman Russ presses R for his ultimate, and all men turn into dogs, and all dogs turn into men.
Just reverses.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yes, exactly. It's like it's like that, It's like that song Werewolf Bar Mitzvah.
And what happens then?
They'll run at people and charge and howl.
Around. Yeah, that makes sense.
And shout and bite and claw and fight.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I think when Magnus starts to lose a game, you can type GG and you and your entire team teleport into a different game that you can then win.
Yeah, nice.
Exactly.
Nice. Nice. I like the way, you know, the tactic of playing against Magnus would just be to bully him until he gets sad and then leaves your game and goes.
Exactly. You have to beat him while he's sulking.
Yes.
Not where he's triumphantly cheating.
Yes. Ferris Manus, just like, you know, a big light show, then he just hits the guy with a spanner. This is like, you know, 3 powers up, but like,
I'm the greatest inventor in the Imperium.
One little hit, and then whatever he hits explodes, or, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just, you know, he's got to make that spanner go a long way. To make it really work it.
Let's think.
Goodman just lectures, it's like a sleep area of effects, sort of sleep
That's
spell.
basically from like Deckard Cain in Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, yeah. He just starts reading, you know, the the rules of the Space Marine, tactical engagement.
Yeah.
Code sees, he just starts reading those.
Yeah,
out.
and if he runs out of that, he starts reading like extended user license agreement for various forms of future software.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Sanguinius causes all Blood Angels to explode when he dies.
Nice.
For better and
Brutal,
for worse.
but nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that's really an alt, but nonetheless. Let's think. Alfarius would be a fun one to design.
It turns out like your ultimate is just Alfarius, just
You're on your opponent's team now.
yeah, or just a random creep is Alfarius.
Yeah.
Just like
Oh
on the
no,
lanes.
that should be I don't know if it was right for the Lion, but the Dark Angel one should totally be, you get to decide what team you're on at any given time, based on who's winning.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, press R. Switch
Yeah.
sides.
Yeah, indeed. Let's think. Who else we got? There are the ones that are sort of easy and hard, like, Jagatai Khan. You just ride the bike. You can just ride a bike.
He does a cool wheelie.
He does a cool wheelie.
It's a cool wheelie.
It's very impressive.
And all goes, whoa.
He remains
It's a 3-second stun.
Yeah. He remains present. Or not.
What else is good?
I mean, the obvious thing for something like Rogel Dawn would be like all buildings are invulnerable for the next minute. That's kind of boring. It's just a glyph.
But
basically.
I mean, it would be boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be boring.
It
Yeah.
would just glyph. Yeah, you just get a really long glyph, that's it.
Yeah. I think maybe what it is you combine that with the idea of the pain glove and you do glyph. So all buildings are invulnerable for 20 seconds or something. But during that time, Dawn just screams helplessly. Ah! Ah!
That's like a map-wide effect. So you know that the glyph's up because you hear him screaming in useless agony.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll play that. Let's Fulgrim's thing be. His actual, matchmaking rating is displayed a lot higher than it actually is.
Maybe he can duel people. That's the thing he does a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's just Legion Commander from
Just
Dota.
Legion, yeah, pretty much what he would do.
Yeah,
so.
true. You're right. Let me think. I suppose there's always like Horus. We always forget about the dead Primarchs.
Yeah. I think Horus would like just turn people on the opponent's team onto your side.
Yeah.
Just with really, really charming, beautiful, charismatic speech.
Yes,
just, like,
indeed.
pick a couple of people
You're
to come onto your side.
You're just gorgeous.
Yeah, and you're shining.
God, what a man.
Bald head. Just it convinces people to.
The Corvus Corax one is that your team gets to have an extra player on it because no one knows you're there. So
Right.
it's even it's 5v5.
Oh, we've only got 4 people.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we'll have an extra person.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then you just realize
Strike
there's a
from the
6th
shadows.
person. Yeah. Think Night Haunter.
Angron is basically Sven.
Yeah.
So he
but
just goes
all
big
the
and
time.
red.
Sven's
All the time,
ulting all the time. Ulting more, if anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Angron's really easy because he's just a video game character anyway.
Basically, it's, some of the Primarchs just are, aren't they?
Yeah. Good. I think we got to the bottom of that.
Yeah, I
Sort of.
think the important ones we covered.
Yeah. So that's the last of our questions. Before we wrap up, I wanted to talk about Miniature's monthly live event. Ooh, thing. So, a couple of weeks ago, I put a questionnaire up on Twitter, or Google questionnaire, to kind of gauge interest in various different kinds of things. And we've sort of gone through those results. And the overwhelming preference, was for an event, an Age of Sigmar event, and something or an event that supported Age of Sigmar and something that had a sort of narrative focus. So that's where we're kind of leaning at the moment. Thanks to everybody who did send us some info. Based on that, I am of the belief that, and I appreciate I kind of weighted it this way a little bit, but I do think, the South Wales Gaming Centre in Cardiff makes the most sense for our purposes.
Yeah, it's very easy to get to through train links and things, and it's also the centre itself is close to pubs and other things that would facilitate some like socialising and fun.
Indeed, yeah. So, and because socialising and to a lesser extent a live recording of the podcast are important to people, we want to factor those things in, which both become more difficult. For example, Warhammer World, which was the most popular alternative destination. It's not worth considering, but it places a lot of restrictions on what we can do and also what is available in the vicinity.
Yeah.
So, particularly given the numbers we're potentially looking at, which, is, purely based on respondents, but anywhere between 15 and 40 people, which again would be quite difficult to do as a a thing we could manage at Warhammer World. So
Yeah.
what this means is that we're going to move ahead with that info basically and try and put something together that will probably be a Age of Sigmar narrative campaign building out of the games we are playing and describing on the podcast and battle reports over the next couple of months. But with also freedom to bring and play 40k if you like, or Shadespire, or, any other game, X-Wing, particularly if we end up at a game agnostic setting.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I'm going to take these results as kind of the starting gun for me to go and actually do the phone calls and make the thing do. So I guess just expect more information on this as time progresses. Also, I should have mentioned, sorry, almost certainly October or November, because I think December's a really difficult time for events for a lot of people. And those 2 months were pretty much neck and neck in terms of how popular they were with people. So a weekend in October and November, if it's the kind of thing you're interested in, watch this space because we will have more info.
Very exciting.
And that brings us to an end of episode 17 of Miniatures Monthly. But obviously you're going to get another Miniatures Monthly all about Age of Sigmar, as if this one was somehow about Subutio, in the next couple of weeks, and then regular Miniatures Monthly at the end of July. So if, you'd like to obviously find out more about the Crate and Crowbar, all our podcasts can be found at crateandcrowbar.com. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/Crate and Crowbar, and all of our stuff is supported by Patreon. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/Crate and Crowbar. Tom, how do people find your tiny plastic people?
They'll be on the Instagrams, and my username there is Ludo Paints Minis. That's Ludo Paints Minis.
Lovely. I'm on Instagram at Exit Warp. That's EXITWARP. And thanks, as ever, to music man Mike Debenham, who composed our intro song. I sometimes forget to credit him, and I feel bad every time. Yeah, what a guy. What a guy.
What a guy.
Anyway, catch you in a couple of weeks, everybody.
See you, folks.